Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto merged with Minato part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Shiki Fuin. Clapping his hands together, Namikaze Minato prepared for his last act in life, the sealing of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Roaring in rage, the Kyuubi thrashed its 9 long tails futilely against the golden chains binding it to the ground, shaking the small forest clearing. The fox's fur was a bright fiery orange, and its size dwarfed mountains. The sheer ferocity and anger pouring off the beast made Minato tremble inside. Minato made eye contact with his wife, Uzumaki Kushina, who was watching him in horror as she did her best to contain the great fox. Let's believe in this child. He is our son after all. The ghastly white apparition of the Shinigami began forming behind him. I will die for my son, it is my duty as his father. Gazing into Minato's eyes, Kushina was left speechless by his resolve. The Shinigami plunged its right hand through Minato, and its hand became transparent as it protruded from Minato's chest. Minato directed the death god's hand, shooting it out and grasping onto the Kyuubi's chest. The hand retracted, dragging the Kyuubi's in half, along with a mass of chakra. Minato gasped as the chakra slammed into his body, burning all of his chakra coils. Grunting in pain, he fell to his knees as he dealt with the strain of having an enormous mass of chakra shoved inside him. Behind him, still held down by Kushina's golden chakra chains, the great Kyuubi no Yoko snarled in pain at the feeling of his very essence being torn in half. The great fox shrunk to less than half his original size. Looking up again, the Kyuubi saw a rather foreboding sight. A ritual altar? He's planning to seal me up again? Inside that infant? The Kyuubi watched in trepidation as Minato lowered his son into a hastily prepared cradle surrounded by candles. Suddenly, Kushina gasped, collapsing to the ground and hacking up blood. Her golden chains loosened. The strain of having given birth combined with the side effects of having the Kyuubi ripped from her system finally showed itself. Kushina? Minato yelled, turning away from his preparations. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the Kyuubi lashed out in defiance, aiming for the infant. No! Shouted Minato and Kushina as they desperately threw themselves in front of the lethal blow. Enduring the sudden agony of the claw piercing through their chests, they grabbed on, feet skidding against the ground, slowing the momentum of the blow. They narrowly prevented the tip of the claw from touching their newborn son. Impaled upon the Kyuubi's claw, Minato coughed out blood and spoke. I said I was his father, dying for him is my right. I'm his mother. It's my right too, shot back Kushina. This is the first time I've lost an argument against you. It proves how serious you are. Thanks, Kushina. Minato summoned the scroll toad, Geratora, and transferred the key for the Shiki Fuin seal to him and dismissed the summon. Kushina, I'm not going to last much longer. I'm launching the 8-pronged seal now so I can put some of our chakra inside Naruto. Let's tell him what we want to say to him. Kushina did her best to condense all of her feelings into a few short sentences as she cried over lost opportunities. While Kushina rambled, Minato watched in horror as the blood that dripped off the Kyuubi's claw smudged a small but vital part of the slowly forming seal on his son's stomach. Damn! The soul matrices. I can't fix this in my condition. There's no telling what will happen now, thought Minato. Naruto, my words to you as your father are same as your chatty mother. I guess I'm sorry for what may happen next. This is it then. I can only pray that nothing too bad will happen to Naruto. I'm sorry, my son, I believe in you. A harsh cry of denial came from the Kyuubi, who felt his newly gained freedom slipping away. In a flash of light the sealing was completed, the Kyuubi dissolving into pure chakra and drawn into the seal on Naruto's navel. The only thing holding up Minato and Kushina had been the claw that impaled them. They collapsed along with the barrier surrounding the sealing site. Minato! Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, came running up to his fallen body. What have you done? Falling to his knees, the Sandaime began a healing jutsu, though he knew it was a lost cause. Sarutobi-sama, cough please, this is my son Naruto Uzumaki. I have sealed half of the Kyuubi's chakra into him, cough please, have him treated as the hero he deserves to be, please, take care of him. Minato, don't worry. I'll take full responsibility of him for you, said the Sandaime solemnly, ending his healing efforts. With those last words, Minato nodded weakly at the Sandaime and sighed. His last thoughts lingering in his mind, Minato closed his eyes for the last time, a feeling of falling slowly into the darkness overtaking his body. Only to have his eyes immediately snap open again. Suddenly, everything was too bright, too loud, too blurry, too vibrant. Simply too much. Colors were swirling hazily in front of his eyes, and Minato felt all too weak. There were shouts coming from all around him, but it seemed as if he was hearing everything from underwater. Would the afterlife really be this chaotic? What is this? Is this? Could it be? Am I still alive? What's happening? He wondered. Quickly! The Yondaime is over here! Kushina-san! Yondaime-sama! Seal the bodies! How did the Kyuubi escape? Sandaime-sama! What happened to the Kyuubi? I'm still alive? The surroundings were a flurry of frantic movements as Minato did his best to gauge what was happening. The Sandaime Hokage was shouting orders and directing various teams of shinobi while the ninja hurried to fulfill those orders. Meanwhile, Minato was still having troubles with his sight and hearing. He performed standard assessment procedures, checking every limb and sense and evaluating his body for injuries. What he found was worrying on several levels. He couldn't see properly, only vague shapes and bright lights. His hearing and sense of smell were somehow significantly improved, but now everything was simply too overwhelming for him to process. There also seemed to be a strange unidentified heat that was emanating from his abdomen. When he tried moving his limbs, he discovered that they would not respond. His fingers were lacking in fine motor control and seemed to be stuck in fists. He couldn't gather any strength to sit up either. Looking down at his body with bleary eyes brought a disturbing revelation. His limbs were tiny. He was naked. He had somehow shrunk and become extremely weak. He watched as a dark shape loomed over him in panic. Just as the shape picked him up, he started to hyperventilate uncontrollably. "Oh, Naruto, my boy, I'm so sorry," cooed the Sandaime. "Wait, what? Naruto? No. 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 This couldn't be happening." He began crying uncontrollably, body refusing any attempts to breathe properly and calm down. "Am I in Naruto's body? How is this possible? The Shinigami should have taken my soul. Did I somehow get swapped with Naruto? Was sealing a chakra imprint the wrong choice? No. That can't be it. The soul matrix only dealt with the separation of the Kyuubi's soul and Naruto's. Did the blood swap targets? But then what happened to Kushina? This is a mess. Who knows when the masked man will be back as well? This shouldn't have happened. How can I fix this?" While Minato was panicking, the Sandaime had stood and was slowly walking away from the tragic scene to help coordinate efforts to begin recovery. Many disaster relief scenarios were running through his mind as he absently rocked the baby in his arms. "Call a council. We must begin recovery efforts and deal with the backlash of this event. We have lost many fine shinobi tonight, and we cannot afford to look weak to the other hidden villages," the Sandaime said to a nearby Umbu. "Hi!" Clan heads and council members slowly filed into the large council room. Still held in the Sandaime's arms, Minato was relieved. From what he could barely make out with his young eyes, many council members were still alive and not critically injured by the Kyuubi attack. He had shelved his panic and theories to deal with them at a later time. His body was tiring quickly. All he wanted to do was sleep, but he had a council meeting to endure. He could see that the fierce Inuzuka clan head Some had her arm in a sling and looked very ragged, while Inoichi, the head of the Yamanaka clan, leaned on Choza. The head of the Akimikis and Shikaku, head of the Naras, trailed entirely behind them. The head of the Aburames, Aburame Shibi, had limped into the room supported by Haishi of the Hyuga clan, while Fugaku, who was head of the Uchiha clan, looking perfectly fine, led a group of distressed civilian council members in. Koharu, Hamura, and Danzo, the Sandaime's advisors, took up positions next to the Sandaime. The council began as the rest of the civilian members were slowly settled in. The Sandaime stood and addressed his council. "Today we have suffered massive losses, including the death of our Yondaime. The reason for the release of the Kyuubi is unknown as of now. Investigations are still underway to determine how exactly the Kyuubi was freed, but for now we must focus on recovery. I will be taking up my previous position as Hokage again during this time." Murmurs of assent went around the room as Danzo started with a frown but stayed silent. The Sandaime covered his face. "Now then. The sad numbers, please, Shikaku." Shikaku stood and delivered his report. "Yes, sir. We have a tentative total death toll of roughly 2,000 shinobi and 1,300 civilian tonight. Injuries are still being tallied and expected to be over 5,000. The Sandaime sighed. "I see we were lucky that the Kyuubi was summoned on the outskirts of the village." "Sandaime-sama, what do you mean by summoned?" The Sandaime sighed again. Sitting back down, he suddenly seemed to have aged by 50 years as he looked down. The Umbu team guarding our previous Jinchuriki was found murdered by an unknown intruder who then kidnapped and extracted the Kyuubi. As I said before, investigations are underway to determine how the locations of our previous Jinchuriki were leaked and who the individual was. Danzo hummed and put his hand to his chin. Sarutobi, many witnesses remarked upon seeing the Sharingan in the Kyuubi's eyes tonight. Fugaku stood sharply. Danzo, are you implying something? How many Uchiha are in the casualties? It seems that the Uchiha compound has avoided most of the damages as well. We are loyal Leaf Shinobi. The Uchiha police force was tasked with ensuring the civilians were safe. That is why the civilian count is much lower than it would have been. Silence! Shouted the Sandaime, slamming his hand down on the table. We will discuss this at a different time. There are many more pressing matters to be discussed. We cannot afford to be divided in our dire straits. Other villages will want to take advantage of our weakened state. Fugaku and Danzo both acquiesced as Fugaku sat down, glaring sharply at Danzo. Danzo merely sighed, an ugly gleam entering his eyes as he leaned back in his seat. After discussing losses, possible solutions, and delegating various responsibilities for a few hours, someone finally addressed the elephant in the room, or rather, child in the room. Sandaime-sama, what is that baby doing here? The Yondaime sacrificed his life using the Shiki Fuin to seal the Kyuubi into this child. His name is Naruto Uzumaki. Immediately there was an uproar in the council, waking the dozing baby. Many of the civilian heads called for the death of the demon vessel, while the clan heads absorbed the information in shock. Silence! Shouted the Sandaime along with a burst of his killing intent. This child is a hero for containing the demon. I will not have a mere baby put to death for what he contains. In fact, even if we did kill this baby, the Kyuubi would simply reform out of our control. Sarutobi, give the Jinchuriki to me. I will train it to the best of my abilities. Konoha will need the strength in the coming days, said Danzo. Sarutobi glared harshly at Danzo. No! He will not be treated as an emotionless weapon. Minato wanted this child to be treated as a hero. He will have a normal childhood. Hiruzen, you are too soft. If he were to have a normal childhood, we would not have the power to face the other villages. My decision is final. He will join the academy when he is ready. Danzo huffed and clenched his fists under the table. The various council members sat in silence for a while as the Sandaime's decree settled over them. Minato secretly sighed in relief. There was gratitude for the kindly old man at being spared the fate of emotionless tool. Then Sandaime-sama, who will raise the Jinchuriki? Asked Hayashi. Some stood bravely. Sandaime-sama, I will take in the pup. Minato felt a rush of affection for the brash clan head, grateful that one of Kushina's close friends had connected the dots, and was willing to stick their neck out for his son. We cannot simply give the Jinchuriki to the Inuzukas, yelled Fugaku. And what is that supposed to mean, huh? Some quickly retorted. Troublesome. The Naras could take him in, huffed Shikaku. The Yamanakas could as well, said Inoichi. Akimichi could work too, Choza stated. Aburame Shibi pushed his glasses up. I believe that my clan can take in the Jinchuriki. Why? Because we Aburame are distanced from a majority of village politics. The Hyuga would be honored to train the Jinchuriki. Uchiha should take the Jinchuriki. Minato felt heartened at all of his friends' support, and he held the tiniest bit of hope that all could go well, until a cold voice brought it all crashing down. Hamura slapped his hand on the table. No. None of the clans should take the Jinchuriki. It would upset the balance between the clans. Kohara nodded. Indeed. There is no straightforward answer to this. I could take the Jinchuriki, if you would just. Danzo tried once more. Enough. The Sandaime stood again. He will go to the orphanage, and his status as Jinchuriki shall be deemed an S-rank secret until he is Chunin. Danzo's frown deepened. Hiruzen. You have truly grown too soft. No matter. I will fix this. The great tree can only truly flourish because of its shadowed roots. The meeting was quickly adjourned, and as the members stood to leave, a truly heartbreaking sound rang out. Thankfully, as a baby it was not out of the norm when Minato couldn't control himself and started wailing. He wanted to rage, sob, and shout. He wanted to throttle the Sandaime and his advisors. The orphan life wasn't a life he wished on anyone, especially his son. He didn't know it was possible to reach the levels of anger and despair he was currently experiencing. The Sandaime left the council room at a slow plod, sighing as he went. There was much work to be done, and young Naruto wouldn't stop crying. Back at his quiet office, there was an unexpected visitor waiting for him. Jiraiya! Where have you been? The Sandaime shouted in anger. Waving his hands in front of him frantically, Jiraiya replied, "Calm down, sensei. I just arrived 10 minutes ago, I missed the attack. Where's the Gaki?" The Sandaime sighed. Minato is dead, Jiraiya. He used the Shiki Fuin to seal the Kyuubi into this child. Jiraiya choked back tears as he looked down in grief. Looking at the child in the Sandaime's arms, he came to a somber conclusion. Sensei, is that his own son? Yes. Just as he died, he told me he wanted his son to be seen as a hero and that his name was Naruto Uzumaki. I see. What will happen to him now? He will go to the orphanage, and his status as Jinchuriki will remain an S-rank secret until he has attained the rank of Chunin. Unless, of course, you would like to take him in as his godfather? Why would he go to the orphanage? What about Kushina? The Kyuubi was released. What do you think happened to Kushina? I can't take him, sensei. I have my spy network to run. Tsunade could look after the brat. And you're right. You shouldn't take him anyways because it would be too obvious to IWA that the Yellow Flash had a son if you were to take in a blonde-haired baby. The sheer disappointment Minato held for his former teacher could not be described. He had fondly remembered the moment he and Kushina had named Jiraiya the godfather. Naruto, eh? Jiraiya said, setting down his teacup. That's right, sensei. It's a great name, after all. I was very inspired by your new book, and I hope that the name and ideals behind it will serve my son well in the future. Minato replied, picking up the tea kettle and topping off Jiraiya's cup. That's right, Databane, chirped Kushina, who has just walked into the room. Well, it was just something I came up with while eating ramen, ha ha ha. Jiraiya laughed, slapping the table. Kushina leaned over Minato and pecked him on the cheek. We would like to name you as godfather if anything were to happen to us, Jiraiya. We trust you a lot, Databane. She threw her arms around Minato. She stared at Jiraiya with a pair of hopeful, watery eyes. Ha! Well then, I would be honored. Lost in thought, Minato nearly missed Jiraiya's next response. Yeah. That too anyway. I originally came here to bring news of a new criminal organization. And what is so significant about this new organization? It's a group called the Akatsuki. Rumor has it that it's a group filled with S-rank missing nin and that they're searching for the tailed beasts. Searching for the tailed beasts? Perhaps the masked man was a part of this Akatsuki? Minato thought. I see, then the information about Naruto must be guarded with utmost importance. Yeah. Sensei, in the meantime, I'll be looking for more information on this group. Of course, Jiraiya. We must keep Konoha safe, it's what Minato wanted after all. Yeah. Both men shared a moment of silence for the fallen Kage. Wrapping up the short encounter, they left to fulfill their duties. The Sandaime headed off to the local orphanage to drop off Naruto, and Jiraiya went off to the next town's hot springs, leaving Minato to contemplate and mourn his new situation. Betrayal was a bitter friend. This was his son. His last request was to take care of his son. This was not what was supposed to happen. What happened to taking full responsibility? Sarutobi and Jiraiya had just spat over everything he had given his life for. Minato knew better than most of the fate that awaited at an orphanage. He had been an orphan himself. Growing up as an orphan in a shinobi village was a painful and grueling experience. He hadn't been a child that stood out among the masses aside from his bright hair. He had slaved over and cherished every last drop of acknowledgement and attention that he could get. As an orphan, he had no significant bonds. Who would even give the time of day to one specific orphan out of the many others? By protecting the village to the best of his abilities, he had something to live for. He had no one and wanted someone, so he devoted himself to the will of fire. He worked to become the perfect shinobi, and he stained his hands with blood in the name of Konoha. Minato's life starting out was extremely difficult. With no clan or significant backing behind him, he had to find ways to increase his strength outside of regular academy lessons. It was a basic fact of the world that clan children had numerous advantages over civilian children. Even more so over orphan civilian children. Minato had raided the shinobi library for any drop of useful information and then dug through the discarded scrolls of various Konoha clans in trash heaps. He scavenged the numerous training grounds for any kind of tools, including discarded kunai, ninja wire, and shuriken. He spied on jounin drilling their genin teams and other training ninja despite the disdain. He trained himself into the ground, and then took a shovel and dug just a bit deeper. Originally, he'd bulldozed through the solitude of being an orphan with a false cheer and exuberance. He had built himself up from nothing, and the thought of having to do it all over again, well, Minato wasn't happy, to say the least. It was crushing to have his efforts ripped away from him, and the realization that the same suffocating loneliness of the orphanage was his son's fate was damning. The council meeting was the most despairing thing he had ever experienced, and that's saying a lot for someone who had survived the Third Shinobi War. All along, his life had been the definition of loneliness. Sure, he had friends, but there was no one who truly understood. Kids at the orphanage couldn't understand his drive to become an excellent shinobi and gain recognition. The teens at the academy couldn't hide their envy when he was picked for a Sanin's Genin team. Regular jounins were intimidated by his reputation. As Hokage, it ensured that all shinobi held him at arm's distance out of respect and deference. His only true respite from the cold, suffocating solitude was someone who could understand him in equal measure. Someone who had lost everything. Someone with a similar void. Uzumaki Kushina. Rocketing through the ranks had filled the cold void somewhat, but it wasn't until he manned up and asked out a certain red-headed terror that he truly felt fulfilled. Tears welled up in his eyes as he thought about his now-lost love. The brash red-headed girl that he first saw declaring herself as the next Hokage after what must have been a traumatic loss struck a chord deep within him. Yuzushio's fall appeared to do nothing to dull the fire that hid her pain. It was simply enrapturing to Minato the way she held herself with confidence and bravado. In her was a similar desperation for companionship and respect. His fall and eventual whirlwind romance that followed was simply inevitable. Like a moth, he was drawn in, burned, and consumed. Minato regularly gave everything for others and never had someone who would do the same for him until Kushina. When he finally obtained the name of Kage, he sacrificed it all in the name of an ideal he could finally believe in. The king of Konoha was the future generation, and he understood that now. And he had wanted. He wanted a family so badly. He wanted that warmth and comfort. He wanted that closeness and love. When it was closest to him, it was cruelly ripped away. And now? Now he would have nothing. Wah! 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 Shut up, you filthy demon! Came a harsh rebuke. Stunned into silence, the baby appeared to stare in shock at the matron, as if asking why she would shout at an infant. Annoying beast! Stay quiet. How does she know? Isn't the Jinchuriki status supposed to be secret? Minato thought. He'd been crying out of hope that someone would feed him, but this was some truly unexpected treatment. This wasn't good. Enemies looking to kidnap a new Jinchuriki would easily find him, and there was no telling how citizens would react if this matron was any indication. Unless the orphanage had been told specifically? Somehow Minato doubted that that was the case. It seemed that the matron had lost someone important during the Kyuubi attack and was taking it out on him. This was quickly picked up on and perpetuated by the rest of the caretakers in the orphanage. As an infant, he was regularly neglected and left to rot in a crib and cold, damp room by himself. His feedings were irregular and far in between. Any cries for help were ignored or rebuffed with violent shouts. And so time passed slowly with increasing monotony. Months flew by and Minato progressed through the various stages of being an infant. Driven by nerves and fear at being a potential father, Minato had purchased all the books in the parenting section at Konoha's bookstores. He was well versed with the developmental rate of an infant. All he had to do was follow the general benchmarks, and how could pass himself off as a normal baby. Or so he thought. The matron of Konohagakure Orphanage was disturbed by the Kyuubi child. This was an understatement to say the least. The fox brat was unnerving on the best of days and absolutely demonic on the worst. It was too observant. Too quiet. Too judging. It was a lot harder to pretend to be a baby when you were a fully grown adult. Contact with other babies was minimal since his caretakers had the tendency to isolate him and leave him to his own devices. But his caretakers definitely took notice of his abnormal growth rate due to taking care of many other children. It was the subtle things that made him different. At first it was dismissed as mental tricks. That baby isn't tracking you around the room. They can't even see properly yet. That baby didn't just sit up. They can't do that yet. Eventually it was chalked up to an elevated development rate. But the way he had no interest in his toys, the way he would knowingly follow words as if he could read already, and the way he could already recognize faces and track people around a room, was simply unnatural. Of course, every little suspicion that the caretakers had eventually made it out to the public in some form of rumor. The Hokage hoped that the rumors would die down as the boy grew. The citizens of the village became more and more nervous with the quick development of the demon baby. Somehow, despite it being an S-rank secret, Naruto's status as a demon container had slipped out to the general civilian populace. Minato himself was unaware of the whispers surrounding his infant son, he was just aware of how deathly bored he was. It was slow going, but he made the most of it, and every minute spent as a baby was a minute subtly expanding on his shinobi skills. As a baby, there really wasn't much to do aside from eating and sleeping. The routine of eat, sleep, wake quickly grew dull for a 24-year-old genius stuck as a baby. After the first few uncomfortable days spent slowly adapting and mourning his situation, Minato quickly ran out of ways to fret. And so he slowly whittled away time by practicing chakra control exercises, meditating, expelling all his chakra to stretch his chakra coils, or honing his sensing abilities. As an infant, his new body already had chakra levels comparable to an average genin, and his reserves would only continue to grow, indicating he could be ninjutsu powerhouse in the near future. During this time period of slow development, that several notable things happened. He discovered a new aspect of his sensory abilities, survived his first assassination attempt, and made contact with the Kyuubi himself. His first assassination was rather tame, so to speak. It had been swiftly dealt with by the watching ANBU agent assigned to him, but it did set a precedent for future attempts. Prior to the assassination attempt, Minato had discovered that he was able to finely sense the emotions of the people surrounding him. It was a strange feeling compared to before, when he was only able to sense presences. Now it felt as if each presence had an emotional echo behind it that he could feel. From the regular ANBU guard that was assigned to him, he learned that finely honed chakra control would hide someone's true emotions somewhat, but there would still be telltale quivers that could seep through. But honestly, what disturbed Minato the most was when there would be an extra presence outside his window aside from the regular ANBU. It would feel like a void of emotions. Just utter emptiness, barely human. Could this be what Danzo's routine felt like? They were keeping tabs on the Jinchuriki already? One dark and stormy night, Minato woke up to a presence oozing pain and anger. It was an ominous feeling of hate and grief that deeply concerned him. He noticed a dark shape that was giving off the sensation slip into his room. Minato had watched from his crib in trepidation as the shadowed figure he sensed slowly crept across the floor towards him. As the figure looked over him, he noticed it was a rather young woman with angry tears trailing down her cheeks. She lifted the pillow in his crib and placed it over his face in an attempt to smother him to death. "This is for my family, you foul demon," she hissed under her breath. She didn't even have time to really start pressing down before there was a surge of protective anger from outside the window. She was quickly tackled and knocked out by a masked figure with bright silver hair. "Kakashi? His stealth skills and chakra control have really improved. I really need to improve my sensing abilities. I didn't even know it was him there until he reacted." The woman was dragged from the room rather harshly by the young Umbu agent, and Minato was left once more to stew in his thoughts. He worried for his former student. Knowing Kakashi, the boy must have thrown himself into mission after mission to cope with yet another grave loss. Minato grieved for Kakashi's lost youth. Somewhere in Konoha, rebuilding a wall with exuberance, a young man dressed in a tight green bodysuit sneezed. Due to this incident, Minato ended up moved to another recently rebuilt orphanage near the outskirts of Konoha. Not that the treatment there was much better though. As for his meeting with the nine-tailed fox, well, it went a little something like this. One day, while meditating, Minato decided to visit his mindscape to see if there was any evidence as to what happened to Naruto. He couldn't accept that this was his new reality. Replacing his son wasn't something he wanted. What kind of father would sacrifice his own son after all? Drip. 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 Strange, is something leaking? Opening his eyes, Minato was greeted by the sight of a dark sewer. The walls were damp and lined with pipes, and a thin layer of dirty water covered the floor. Guttering torches were placed sporadically along the walls, and the dark tunnels led off far into the distance. Is this my mindscape? Is what happened during the sealing so traumatic that it reverted my golden plane to this mess? I know this is what my mindscape looked like before I learned how to fix it, but still, or is this because I'm in a different body? Minato glanced down as he realized that his point of view was rather familiar. Huh. I'm in my old body again? But then does that mean Naruto is here? A spark of hope lit up in Minato's heart. If I can find Naruto here, maybe I can fix this and give him his body back. Walking down the dimly lit tunnel in front of him, Minato soon came upon a massive cage which was held shut with a large piece of paper with the word seal upon it. Yondaime! The shout was followed by a claw hurtling out of the darkness which came flying at Minato, only for him to swiftly dodge to the side. Come here, I'll rip you to shreds! The Kyuubi roared from behind the bars. No thank you, Minato awkwardly responded, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. Come here to gloat over your prisoner? Huh! Bowing deeply, Minato apologized. Actually, no, I deeply apologize for your situation. So pity is it? I don't need your filthy human emotions. Release me. I'm sorry I had to seal you away, but I can't do that without dire consequences. Of course. You selfish humans always place yourselves first, the Kyuubi humphed, crossing his arms. I am sorry, Kyuubi-sama, but if I were to release you, it would result in the death of my son, and eventually someone else would seal you away again. You are too powerful, and humanity has no other way of protecting themselves. You think that makes it okay? No, of course not, Kyuubi-sama. I know you didn't intentionally attack Konoha, but I cannot allow my home to come to harm. My precious people live here after all. I sacrificed myself so that I could protect this village. But if it's not too presumptuous, if I could ask for your assistance, I would be deeply grateful. You cannot fool me. I see now you reveal your true colors, human. The Kyuubi growled and laid back down. You only desire my power, correct? That's all you humans ever want from me aside from keeping me locked away. Actually no, though I do apologize for the misunderstanding. I need help looking for my son. He should be in here somewhere. What? Ihei Minato scratched his head awkwardly. Something went wrong during the sealing and I somehow ended up in your vessel's body, or well, my son's body. I'm hoping I can fix this. The Kyuubi sat back in thought, contemplating this strange new occurrence that had distracted him from his rage. The human was strange, addressing him with respect and apologizing for his unfortunate circumstances. He looked at the seal holding him in his cage, noticing a strange blot on one of the prongs of the 8-sign seal. He pointed accusingly at it. Human. What is this blot on the seal? Oh, that. I think that's what caused this problem in the first place. When you impaled us. He choked for a bit, thinking of Kushina, his next words coming out rather strained. Some blood dripped off your claw onto the seal. Humph. I see. Perhaps this defect on the soul separation matrix swapped the subject of the sacrifice to the Shinigami. Oh, so you do have some sealing knowledge? Do not patronize me, filthy human. I was sealed into 2 Uzumakis, and what prisoner wouldn't learn everything they could about the thing jailing them? Yes, of course, I apologize. I wasn't aware you had access to their knowledge. I studied Kushina's seal, but the mind separation sequence wasn't specific enough in detailing what could be shared between Jinchuriki and Biju. Kushina also didn't tell me much about her interactions with you. Humph, of course not. She barely even interacted with me, as you say. I was left to rot, chained to a giant moon with stakes driven through me. She foolishly believed that love was what could hold me back. Some nonsense, no doubt, Mito filled her mind with. Bowing his head in thought, Minato mused, hypothetically speaking, if I shared my memories with you, could you help me find my son? What? Are you a fool? You would hand the memories of the seal over to its prisoner? No, not at all. Minato calmly stated, the seal requires a key that I have given to a summon you cannot access. The seal I have placed my trust in, and the key cannot be used from inside the seal. Then why should I help you, selfish human? This whole situation is your fault. Why should I even consider helping my jailer? What does this matter to me if the one jailing me changes? I will still be contained here after all. Because if what you think happened to Naruto is true, then I can return your half to you. The Kyuubi paused in thought. Being half a creature was a very uncomfortable experience, and how would you accomplish this feat you speak of? There is a way that someone can release what is trapped in the Shinigami's stomach through a ritual, but I am unsure of what requirements there are to perform it. I see. The Kyuubi scratched his chin, musing. It would be much easier trying to escape if I had my half, and it doesn't really matter if my jailer changes. Human. I will assist you in returning my half. I will not help you with other matters. Now, show me your memories. Sorry. How do I do that? Just lift up the corner of the seal. The natural deterioration of the seal would have leaked your memories over to me, so we just need to speed it up a bit. Oh. So that's how the memory leakage works, I see. How much of the seal do I need to remove? Preferably all of it. Minato stared blankly at the Kyuubi for a bit. Fine. Just about as much as your fingernail. Understood. Minato closed his eyes and imagined himself rising to the level of the seal that was high above him. Opening his eyes again, he was right in front of the seal. He picked at the corner of the paper, carefully tearing just enough of it away. Good. Now leave me be. We will discuss this at a later time after I have finished sorting through your filthy human memories. Haha, well, you don't have to put it like that, but okay. I'll leave you to it, Kyuubi. Thank you very much for your assistance. Just get out already. I'm leaving. Growing up in an orphanage for a second time, Minato's life was defined by the word solitude once again. The first time around he was only ever another faceless figure in a crowd of others, but this time he was singled out and made a pariah. Minato knew that in order to successfully pull off an act as a child he could not display habits of his past life. All attention was on him, he had quickly realized. His every action was scrutinized and critics were everywhere, judging his every step for demonic attributes. Developing a list of habits to train himself out of was a must. He couldn't have too many distinctive tics that corresponded with a dead man, just in case people took it the wrong way. Other children in the orphanage were discouraged from playing with the small whiskered child, and the Minato was often told to sit in a corner quietly. Whenever food was served, the caretakers made sure that Naruto was served last, with as little food as possible. All the dirtiest and hardest chores around the orphanage were also given to him. Generally around? It was a terrible experience. Though he was never beaten since there was a regular ANBU patrol that he could feel pass by every once in a while, he was just neglected as much as possible. Somehow Minato made it work. As soon as he could walk, Minato took the opportunity to potty train himself. The matron took the opportunity to neglect the child further. None of the neglect bothered Minato, who was an adult in a child's body, but it did disturb him greatly when he considered what could have happened to his son. And so, Minato took care of himself as best he could in place of his son. He made sure that he was clean and brushed his teeth regularly, even though no one taught him how to do these things. He would also get up at night and raid the kitchen for extra food to make sure he was properly fed. It was when other children were starting to learn how to read and write that Minato truly started to get angry at his situation. During the times that caretakers would read to the children, Naruto was forced out into the backyard to wander on his own. Of course, this wasn't really a problem for Minato since he already knew how to read and write, but the treatment infuriated and saddened him. Minato knew the importance of having someone to blame after a disaster, but he didn't wish the role upon anyone. Especially not his own son. Like this, months slowly passed, and then years went by. Konoha slowly recovered from the devastation left behind by the Kyuubi. Minato missed his own funeral and the mass funeral that followed on account of being neglected in a crib, but the following years, where the day of mourning had become replaced by a festival of remembrance, saw Minato sitting isolated in his room staring forlornly out the window. His birthday had become a festival that all were welcome to except for him. The caretakers at the orphanage made sure that he was as miserable as possible on that day. Minato's first experience shopping as himself went a little something like this. Boy walks into a store. Boy buys items. Boy walks out of the store. Minato's first experience shopping for himself as Naruto went something like this. It was a hot day out, and Minato was sent out of the orphanage for the first time as an errand boy for some groceries. A friendly-looking woman greeted him as he walked into the small corner shop. "Hi, welcome to What Are You Doing Here, you filthy demon?" Instantly that friendly-looking face was contorted into an ugly-looking grimace. "I just wanted to buy a few groceries," Minato hesitantly replied. "Get out of my shop, demon scum! I refuse to serve the likes of you here," she roared in response, picking up a broom and brandishing it violently in his direction. Not wanting to cause a further scene, Minato quickly hightailed it out of the store, followed by a few thrown vegetables. A demon? Is the general opinion of Jinchurikis really that low? How do so many people know who the Jinchuriki is anyways? Minato had encountered a few glares along the way to the store, but he had assumed that it was due to his appearance as an impoverished child. If I return without the groceries, things might escalate in a bad direction. I'll have to try a different store, I guess. Minato trotted off in the opposite direction of the store he'd just run out, hoping that the other stalls wouldn't know of his status. It was not to be. Now that he was paying attention, the stares that he received while walking were entirely hostile in nature. His sensing abilities, which he hadn't been using before, were now active, detecting high levels of resentment, anger, and fear. He could hear people whispering to each other nastily as he passed by. "Did you see those whiskers? They say he's the demon reborn." "Shh. Be careful with what you say." "That boy. That's the one that the Yondaime trapped the demon in." "Those marks. It's him. The weakened demon." "So it's true. The demon is a child now." "Honey, you see that child? Remember his face. Don't go near him, he's very dangerous." Minato wanted to hang his head in shame. The people of his beloved Konoha acting in such a manner brought him a nameless grief. The Konoha he knew and loved was filled with people who always had a smile ready for any outsider, yet now it was a village filled with pain and hate. By the time Minato had arrived at the next closest grocery store, his self-confidence had dropped several levels. He could only hope that things would get better with time. This time he was able to enter the store without problems and find all the things he needed to buy. But by the time he arrived at the counter to pay for his items, the cashier had started giving him a very nasty look. 1250 real, please. What? But that's twice the price that's listed. 1250 real or get out. But 1250 real or out, boy. Minato huffed in frustration. He dug out his money and paid with his own meager savings when the allowance the matron gave him didn't cover the costs. By this point Minato had more than enough, except the world wasn't quite done with him yet. As he was walking back to the orphanage, contemplating how best to hide the whisker marks on his cheeks, he was suddenly bumped roughly off his feet by a civilian walking by, spilling his groceries all over the road. He quickly turned, hoping to catch the person who did it, but whoever they were long gone. Minato was just barely holding on to his rage and sadness at the point. He angrily picked up his dirty vegetables and hurried the rest of the way to the orphanage. Kurama was confused. Minato was the most confusing human he'd ever met. Not that he'd met many, mind you, but his previous containers had been pretty eccentric. Minato was just on a whole other level. First, the human treats him politely and with respect, then he willingly negotiates with him, he willingly degrades the seal holding Kurama's massive power away, and then he lets Kurama rummage through his memories? Madness. Sheer human stupidity? And yet in Minato's memories he is often called a genius? The fine line between genius and insanity? Kurama was confused. He had seen such dark depths of humanity from Minato's memories he could barely understand why Minato would sacrifice himself for Konoha. It was shocking how much blood Minato had spilled, even more shocking still how many he had saved. Minato seemed like the ultimate paradox. The savior, and yet the demon. Kurama couldn't understand how Minato came out of the Third Shinobi War with hope for humanity even after slaughtering 1,000 IWA shinobi like pigs. The trauma he encountered while trawling Minato's memories was no joke at all. Some of it made Kurama want to hurl his chakra-based guts out. Still, Kurama wondered. Could this vessel be the one that the sage spoke of? Minato valued family. His entire life was based around searching for and protecting a family. Kurama understood Minato's loneliness and need for a family. After all, he had been created with siblings who were always connected no matter what. It was only until Hashirama started sealing away the Biju that he understood what loneliness was truly like. So Kurama could respect Minato for dealing with the hand that life had dealt him. It was interesting seeing his previous vessel from another point of view though. He still found her obnoxious and too aggressive, but Kurama could admit that Kushina could grow on you like a weed. Hey, human. What the Kyuubi? Minato thought in surprise. The Kyuubi's voice had just come out of nowhere, startling him from his contemplations. He had returned to the orphanage and received a scolding for the dirty produce, and was sent to his room with no dinner. He'd begun to brood, mulling over past mistakes, wondering where it all went wrong. Yes, it is me, human. Get down here. We will discuss the seal situation. Fascinating. I didn't know that the Jinchuriki could communicate with the Biju like this. Did you ever do this with Kushina? Just get down here already. Minato frowned at the non-response but shrugged, letting his eyes fall shut, crossing his legs and dropping into a meditative state. Opening his eyes to a familiar dank sewer. Before you ask? No. I did not find your son in the seal. I do not know about the rest of your mindscape just yet. Minato deflated a bit. I see, thank you very much for your efforts, Kyuubi-sama. He perked up again. The rest of my mindscape, huh? Mind waiting a while, Kyuubi-sama? I'll be right back. Minato flashed away to the rest of his mind in a hurry, leaving the Kyuubi with no chance to respond. The Kyuubi was left to think in silence as Minato's hurried footsteps echoed through the dark away from him. Should I? No, if he knows, then I will be left without my other half. Who knows, it may work yet. Left thinking, Kurama could admit that he respected the man he was sealed by. Minato had displayed many admirable qualities and was a paragon of what a shinobi should be. Minato had sacrificed his own happiness for the sake of his perceived greater good, and now he was continuing through life with little resentment from what Kurama could see. Hey, Kyuubi-sama? I couldn't find Naruto either, said Minato, interrupting the Kyuubi's musings. I found an area where I could revisit my memories, which was helpful, but no manifestation of my son anywhere to be found. I see. Then we must rely on your knowledge of how to remove something from the Shinigami's stomach. I suppose so, Minato said solemnly. I will need time to prepare for the Shinigami ritual, perhaps several years. My body isn't old enough to gain access to the information that I need to perform the ritual. You are a shinobi, are you not? What is to stop you from sneaking in? I will need to train to avoid detection. This body is not ready for any shinobi skills aside from sensing. Speaking of which, Minato paused and thought, are you the one I should be thanking for my new sensing capabilities? What do you speak of, human? I mean that recently I've been able to sense the emotions of people surrounding me. I was never able to do such a thing in my past life after all. Humph. Of course you are. I am the great Kyuubi no Yoko, such a thing is well within my capabilities. I see. Well then, thank you very much, it has been very useful so far. Humph. As if I need your thanks. He's a bit of a tsundere, isn't he? Was Minato's amusing revelation. Thank you the way, Kyuubi-sama. I will be leaving now. Is there anything else you needed? Just leave. Alright then, thank you very much for your assistance. Opening his eyes again, Minato was filled with a renewed sense of hope over his situation. He would train his skills and then return his son's body to its rightful owner. Hopefully there wouldn't have been too many consequences for his son. Minato quickly resorted to stealing from the matron's office at night to procure supplies for sealing. He spent long hours working on his calligraphy skills, honing his handwriting and muscle memory so that he could regain his skill with Fuinjutsu. Minato wished he had access to his rightful inheritance, as it would be priceless at this point to have his old notes, so he could study what went wrong with the sealing process. In fact, he wished that any of his friends could have taken him in. It was bound to be much better than his current situation after all. He wished he could remain up to date on the news regarding Konoha's shinobi forces, but as a child it was extremely difficult to acquire any accurate rumors of the going-ons in a shinobi village. Aside from actively staking out the Jounin lounge, there wasn't very much that Minato could do to stay updated. He'd heard rumors of a conflict between Kyuumo and Konoha over an ambassador, but he was never sure of the full details behind the situation. It caused Minato no end of grief to be so thoroughly out of the loop when previously he'd been informed on every little matter that occurred in the village. On Naruto/Minato's 5/29th birthday, he was promptly evicted from the orphanage. The matron had taken him by the arm, roughly dragging him out of his dingy room and tossed him on the street, roaring, "You're old enough now, brat. You can live on your own now. Never come back." Minato took this new development rather well in his opinion. He didn't throw a tantrum, nor did he break down crying in the middle of the street like any other child might have. Instead, he approached the situation with a cold, calculated mindset. Being thrown out of the orphanage brought several key problems that he could solve simply due to his experience. He would need shelter which he could find in the forest surrounding the village and food which he could hunt or grow. This development would allow for greater freedoms in regards to his training. He could easily survive on his own with his extensive survival training from another lifetime. And thus Minato's second life as a street rat/forest hermit began. He carefully suppressed his chakra to sneak past the lazy Nara Chunins. Suppressing chakra was like turning your chakra into a flat blanket and then tightly rolling it up into a ball. It worked as both a meditation method and chakra control exercise. Though the true trick to suppressing chakra and hiding your signature was to change your inner chakra element to resonate with nature or whatever element was most abundant in, and made sages much more adept at hiding since they could completely resonate with nature and remove all signs of human presence. It wasn't all bad, mainly because of his prior experience acting as a buffer. Minato took full advantage of the signature laziness of the Nara clan and eked out a living in one of the caves in their compound forest. Sneaking past Nara clansmen every day was not very hard, but still helped Minato polish his stealth skills that he'd let decline after the development of his signature Haration. The cave that he discovered was roughly the size of a small house with a small brook running past it. Minato took it upon himself to turn it into his secret base, and proceeded to plaster it and the surrounding clearing with various security seals. With his new base complete, Minato was free to train to his heart's content. After exhausting himself thoroughly with various exercises and stretches to keep his childhood flexibility, Minato decided to train justice next. He would slowly work his way up from the academy trio to his old beloved Haration. Running through the hand seals for the basic henge technique multiple times, Minato trained his seal speed and finger dexterity. He ran the jutsu signs with Aught Chakra until his fingers felt warmed up, but just as he was actually about to perform the technique, a leaf floated by, brushing his nose and causing him to sneeze. Achoo! Poof! A cloud of smoke erupted from his body, revealing his original body complete with Jounin vest and Kage cloak. Well damn, I'm just glad I didn't blow up by accident. That would have been an embarrassing way to go. Young boy discovered dead in the forest after overloading the henge. Perhaps this is why it's an academy jutsu. Oh well, might as well make the best of it. Deciding to return to his cave while practicing his chakra control by maintaining the henge, he walked face first into a branch he would have easily walked under with his Naruto height. Wait, what? He thought, holding his painfully throbbing nose. Overloading a henge with chakra produces a solid transformation. Solid transformations are any infiltrator's wet dream, and I've just discovered it by accident. Why has no one else discovered this? Or is it that my chakra density has changed due to being a Jinchuriki? Or is the chakra requirement just too high for normal ninjas? Testing his old body and running through his old katos felt like a dream. It was amazing having his old body and strength back, and it was almost too good to be true. After testing the technique several times by overloading the jutsu on purpose with the same amount of chakra as the first accidental transformation, Minato had a flash of inspiration. Combining the henge with shadow clones and the shadow clone kunai jutsu would be devastating. Now that he had the reserves to pull off more than 10 shadow clones, he would be an absolute monster to face with solid transformations into kunai or shuriken. Unfortunately, he came to a separate realization along with his elation at increased combat potential. He could hypothetically return to the village and live under a henge. Except explaining how he was back from the dead was definitely a long shot, and did he really want to return to the Hokage position? Did Konoha really deserve him as Hokage again? But if he was Hokage, he could change what he had seen. His 1 year in office hadn't been enough time to really solve any of Konoha's problems. There were many issues he had wanted to tackle, but his term had ended before he could even touch them. What do you mean you can't find him? The Hokage shouted, slamming his hands on his desk. How long has it been since he went missing? Hokage-sama, it's been 5 months. We checked the orphanage and everywhere in the surrounding area, said the trembling ANBU agent. We can't find him, but villagers report to seeing him every once in a while on the outskirts of the village wandering around. The Hokage leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead incredulously. My most highly trained ANBU can't even locate a 5-year-old child. Why was I not told sooner? Hokage-sama, we have tried tailing him, but he slips our senses no matter what we do. We suspect he's a natural-born censor. Danzo-sama said he would take care of it as well. Danzo? He never told me a thing. And perhaps we need to overhaul the ANBU training programs if even a 5-year-old child is able to shake off our ANBU, he bit out harshly. The Sandaime sighed and stood, ignoring the shivers of fear coming from the ANBU hidden in the room. I shall go to him myself. Dismissed. Hi. Minato waited with thinly veiled patience for the fish to finish cooking. His stomach was absolutely roaring in hunger. Biting into his roasted fish, he started as he realized there was suddenly a figure sitting across from him in front of his small fire. Several emotions quickly ripped through him, only just barely hidden by his shock at being snuck up on. It was the Sandaime himself. The Sandaime was not dressed in his usual Hokage robes, but a regular brown haori that had the kanji for fire stitched on the back, a beige scarf, and plain tan shirt and pants. Minato's thoughts flashed quickly, indignant anger at his treatment, and the old fondness he held for the man battled it out in his mind. Who are you? He asked swiftly to deflect any suspicion. Just an old man passing through, was the kind response. Minato stared in confusion at the man as his mind raced to figure out what the game here was, until a strange sound rippled across the clearing. Growl. The young boy burst out in laughter with the old man at the sound and decided to see what the Hokage wanted, offering the old man one of his grilled fish. Here, Gramps, eat this. Oh, thank you, said the old man, taking the fish in hand gratefully. The duo ate in peace for a while. Minato did his best to figure out exactly what the old man's ploy was while crunching noisily on his grilled fish. It had been 5 years, and this was the first time the man had appeared in front of him in person. Knowing the old man, he probably kept track of Naruto through his crystal ball, but got worried after Minato started training in his warded training area and thus could no longer find him. Closely examining the wizened figure in front of him, Minato noted the Hokage's tightly controlled and disciplined chakra, as well as the lack of any obvious tells as to what the man was feeling in front of him. Suddenly the Sandaime spoke, looking up at the darkened star-filled sky. Look at all those stars. Each one of those stars is like our world's sun. Yes. This world is boundless. Remembering similar introspective talks with his wise predecessor, Minato played along. Eh? You sure know a lot, old man. Spreading his arms out and drawing them back in, the old man said, compared to the vastness of the world, man's existence is very insignificant. Both men paused in eating for a bit to appreciate the beauty of the night sky splayed above them. The deep moment was ruined by another stomach growl, and the two burst out laughing together, only calming down after much of the tension had drained out of Minato's shoulders. So, my boy, what are you doing out here all on your own? And the tension was back full force, not that Sarutobi noticed though. Eating, was the glib response. Ha! I see. Where are your parents? Are you sure you should be out so late on your own? A surge of rage went through Minato's body at the act that was being put on in front of him, but he didn't let any of his thoughts show in his body or chakra. It was time to guilt trip the Sandaime into next week. He looked down despondently, and let his eyes fill up with tears before bouncing back up cheerfully. I haven't got any. I've always been on my own, old man, he chirped. The old man coughed awkwardly and rubbed the back of his neck. I see. Still, it's not very safe out here, isn't it? Why aren't you at the orphanage, my boy? At this question, Minato let a few tears slip out before roughly scrubbing them away. They kicked me out a while ago. But it's okay. I'm fine on my own. Child. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. It's very nice to meet you. My name is Sarutobi Hiruzen. I think that old man is a better name for you. Ha ha. Very well then, old man, it is. So what do you need, old man? How long have you been living on your own out here, my child? 5 months. I see. It's very impressive that you've managed so well on your own. Say, my boy, what if I could give you a place to live? You can do that? But I can't give you anything in return. No, you wouldn't need to worry about that. Orphans get a stipend that they can depend on. What's a stipend? It's a certain amount of money given to those who can't work just yet. Oh, okay. Now come with me for a while, my child. I'll get you set up. Sure, but I want to finish my fish first. Of course, my child. Minato's affairs were quickly sorted out at the Hokage Tower. He was offered a new place to live, complete with amenities and various other daily necessities like clothes and whatnot. It was interesting to note that the old building that was offered to him was one he had lived in during his poor genin days. He wondered if the Sandaime knew what he was doing offering him this apartment, or if it was just a sick coincidence. He not so fondly remembered moldy walls and a dripping roof when he was living here. He doubted it had improved much during his time away. Moving into his new apartment was a strange experience. There was a bit of déjà vu from seeing the same building but having a different room. It was comforting in a strange way. To have something familiar when everything was so different. Leaving his new/old apartment, Minato decided to visit an old training grounds that was nearby. He had frequently visited the small enclosed training ground number 41 as a genin with Kushina, and there were many precious memories associated with the small forest clearing. The day was bright and cheerful at training ground 41, birds were chirping happily, and the small brook babbled peacefully. Minato used the peace to meditate, calmly immersing himself in the sounds and peace of nature. He felt a surge of joy when he felt a certain familiar presence pop up near his location. Minato! A cheerful voice called out, disturbing the tranquility of the training ground. Kushina! He jumped to his feet excitedly, running over to the red-headed Chunin. She hugged him happily. So what's this I heard about a jounin promotion, huh? Congratulations, Databane! She cheered. Haha, thanks. Minato scratched his head sheepishly as Kushina hung off of him like a koala. Oh, I had something I wanted to ask you, he said, tucking his hands in his pockets to hide his nervous twitching. Huh? Well, what is it then? Kushina asked, tilting her head cutely to the side. Blushing with nerves overtaking him, he managed to stutter out a question. Well, that is, would you go out with me? Kushina blanked, letting go of Minato in her confusion. That is, I would like to take you out on a date. Minato crossed his fingers hopefully. Of course, Databane! Kushina cried, launching herself at him with a big crushing hug, sending him crashing to the ground in a heap. What took you so long? You silly! Minato let out a relieved laugh and hugged her back enthusiastically. Let's go get some ramen, any? Hey! What's a kid doing here? A smooth voice questioned. Minato whipped around. He had been so lost in thought that he hadn't noticed the faint chakra signature of the new speaker. The new arrival appeared to be a freshly minted chunin with short black curly hair, long girly eyelashes, and cold dark eyes. They were also wearing the standard navy Uchiha shirt and tan shorts with the customary fan crest stitched on the back of the shirt. Nothing. Minato squeaked, still slightly out of it. The stranger tilted his head to the side and smirked. Sure, kid. What are you doing here? Don't you know training grounds are off limits for civilians? I was just exploring. I'm gonna be a shinobi too. Ho, a little pipsqueak like you wants to be a shinobi too, huh? Don't you know that shinobi follow rules? But even the best shinobi know that some rules are made to be broken, at times. Ha ha ha. I like you, kid. I'm Uchiha Shursui. What's your name? I'm Uzumaki Naruto. It's nice to meet you, Shursui-san. Oh ho, respectful little brat, aren't you? Since you're here, might as well make the most of it and spar with me, HM? Spar? With you? Are you sure? Sure, Pipsqueak, let's see what you've got. Alright. But you better take me seriously. Haha. We'll see. With those words, Shursui settled into the basic Uchiha interceptor stance. Minato himself decided to settle on the basic academy stance even though he knew of many other taijutsu styles. Taijutsu only? Minato asked. Of course, Pipsqueak. I'm going to make you take that name back, you know? Bring it. Pipsqueak. And so Minato brought it. Making the seal of confrontation which Shursui returned, he quickly rushed Shursui in a burst of speed. Minato threw a quick jab to Shursui's chest. The jab was simply sidestepped, and Shursui retaliated with a leg sweep. Minato jumped over the sweep while Shursui capitalized on the fact that he couldn't dodge with a spinning backhand. Minato narrowly blocked the blow but was sent flying towards a tree. Flipping around mid-air and pushing off the tree, Minato rushed at Shursui with a flying kick. Shursui dodged again, letting Minato fly by. Taking the opportunity to aim a jab towards Minato's ribs. Minato took the hit intentionally, remaining cautious and showing what he could do. Both fighters had similar thoughts racing through their minds. He's fast. Really fast. Minato sprung up again and snapped his right leg out in a high kick aimed for Shursui's face. Shursui caught Minato's leg and threw him to the side using his superior strength. Strong. It seems I can take this a little seriously, Minato thought. Picking himself off the ground, Minato was determined to at least get rid of the annoying nickname. He sent a flurry of blows towards Shursui, increasing his speed subtly as he went. Shursui narrowly dodged around each punch, sweat dropping as he went. Did this kid just get even faster? Looks like I have to up my game. He might just give me a workout. Shursui let himself be pressed backwards until his back hit a tree. Minato saw this and struck out with his left leg in a roundhouse kick chance. Shursui ducked beneath Minato's leg under his guard and lashed out at Minato's supporting leg, sending Minato tumbling to the ground again. You're not taking this seriously, are you? Shursui asked incredulously. What do you mean? I mean, you can obviously go much faster, right? Well, maybe. Gotcha, I'll just have to force you to show me then. For the first time in the spar, Shursui rushed at Minato with a blazing fast punch, Minato swiftly ducking into Shursui's guard with a sharp jab to his gut and darted away. Oof. Now that's what I'm talking about, Pipsqueak. Minato grinned. I'm gonna make you regret that. Oh? How so? Shursui shot forwards again with a wide sweep of his arm, only to yelp when Minato darted to the side and punched him in the kidney. Minato gave Shursui a bit of time to recover before going at him again with a high kick. Shursui saw the kick coming and blocked the kick, launching himself in a tackle at Minato. The two wrestled on the ground for a bit before Shursui rolled over Minato with his greater build and sat on top of him. Ha! Gotcha, Pipsqueak. Damn it. That's not fair, maybe you're just fat. Oh, that's kinda rude, don't you know? I'll have you know I'm not fat. Yeah, get off of me, you're heavy. Slowly crawling off of Minato and dusting himself off, Shursui remarked, Say Pipsqueak, that wasn't a bad spar. Where'd you learn the academy style? Someone teaching you? Minato sat up and awkwardly rubbed the back of his head, laughing nervously. Nah, I watched some students practicing and copied them, he said truthfully. Whoa, really? You learned taijutsu by copying what you saw? No teachers? Shursui didn't bother to hide his gaping. Haha, yeah. Damn, Pipsqueak, imagine what you could do with a teacher. That's it. I've decided. I'll teach you. Is that really alright? Won't you be busy with missions? Don't worry about it, Shorty. I've got this, Shursui confidently replied. Well, if you say so, Minato said unsurely, and I'm not that short, Databeo. Compared to me, you are, ha ha ha. That's not a fair comparison, pouted Minato, puffing his cheeks. It is to me, came the cheeky response as Shursui jokingly poked Minato's puffy cheeks. Batting Shursui's hands away, Minato huffed and turned away in thought. Training with Shursui would be a good cover for any shinobi skills he might show off as Naruto. It would give him an excuse to use the henge without suspicion at the very least. Making up his mind, Minato turned back to Shursui with a wide smile on his face. You know what? Sure, I'll train with you. But you better be able to keep up. Hey, I should be saying that to you, Shursui said indignantly. A childish impulse took over Minato, making him stick out his tongue in retaliation. You brat! What happened to the respect from earlier? Get over here! Shursui laughed as he promptly leapt up, chasing after Naruto, who had yelped and scrambled away, laughing as he went. Minato couldn't remember the last time he felt so lighthearted as the chase quickly devolved into a game of ninja tag. He cackled as he tripped Shursui, who had lunged for him, into a tumbling heap. Oh, that's it! I'm gonna get you now! Shursui declared, jumping to his feet with a determined gleam in his eyes. Minato's eyes narrowed. Catch me if you can! He yelled, sticking out his tongue for the second time. And so the chase was on. The game encompassed the entire training grounds, Minato leading Shursui on a wild goose chase all over the place. Several times Minato had led Shursui into a few old and abandoned traps just for giggles. While Shursui dodged and around projectiles and pitfalls, he cursed Naruto under his breath, leading to even more giggles from the child. When Shursui had finally had enough of entertaining the little blonde devil, he quickly used the most flawless Shunshin jutsu that Minato had ever seen, placing himself in front of Naruto, who then promptly crashed into Shursui, sending both boys tumbling to the ground for the nth time that day. Hey! No fair, you cheated! Minato shouted in jest. Ninjas don't cheat. They win. Shursui smugly replied, You're one slippery kid, you know that? Minato laughed. Slippery was rather tame for one called the Yellow Flash, haha, I do my best. Minato dusted himself off before he considered what he had seen. Say, that was the Shunshin jutsu, right? Huh. Oh yeah. It's my specialty. They'll be calling me Shunshin no Shursui in no time. Shursui crowed. Ha ha, I'd like to see that. Can you teach me that? Of course, little pipsqueak. You're my student, and it's my signature technique after all. Wow, really? Yeah. I'll be as fast as the Yellow Flash one day. You'll see. Cool. And it was cool. From what Minato could tell, Shursui had spent countless hours perfecting the jutsu and was capable of using it in high-speed combat. Most shinobi were unable to do so, as the Shunshin would leave a distinctive chakra marker at the destination just before the shinobi performed the jutsu, making it easily countered. Shursui was fast enough that the marker was basically non-existent, which was why Minato had crashed into him when he used it so suddenly. It was amazing that this young Chunin already had a technique that would put him on the same levels of speed as the Hiraishin. Minato's own Shunshin had been just a step away from Shursui's, which had prompted him to create the Hiraishin, as he was dissatisfied with the speed of his own Shunshin. Minato fondly remembered crashing into various objects while trying to perfect his own Shunshin. Shursui must have suffered equal amounts of pain to achieve such a polished Shunshin. After making further plans with Shursui and waving their goodbyes, Minato returned to his apartment, under a sneaky henge to hide his whisker marks. He detachedly observed the stark difference in treatment he received from the civilians. It was like the whiskers painted a sign that said, "Please glare here." And now that they were gone, he was just another regular dirty kid returning home after playing too much. Except the problem was that Minato didn't want to live life under a henge. He wanted his son to be proud of who and what he was without fear of vengeance. Only time could tell if things would ever change, Minato mused. Sarutobi Hiruzen was a tired man. He had served Konoha faithfully for many years, surviving the Second and Third Shinobi Wars. Just when he thought he could retire in peace, his successor had to go pull the ultimate heroic act and sacrifice himself for Konoha. Hiruzen reminisced sadly. Minato was a brilliant young man whose time hadn't even really begun yet. It was a true pity that the Kyuubi incident had happened. Hiruzen regretted not taking care of Naruto more in the place of Minato, but the boy seemed to be doing okay. He had survived on his own for 5 months, for heaven's sake. Talk about resourceful. Hiruzen really should have kept a closer eye on that orphanage rather than just checking in on Naruto with his crystal ball every once in a while. Speaking of which, the whole orphanage debacle was giving him a headache. He couldn't tell what Danzo's intentions were towards Naruto. Perhaps the old fool had thought to make Naruto desperate for help and then lend a helping hand, making Naruto indebted to him? Hiruzen was just simply thankful that he had decided to ask the ANBU about the young boy that day. He needed to establish that his ANBU reported to him, and only him now. So much work to do on top of all his ever-blasted paperwork. Hiruzen sighed. At the very least, Minato's son seemed to be happy. Hiruzen had visited the young boy at his apartment with an offer of dinner the other day. The boy had seemed cheerful enough despite the animosity that Hiruzen could see him encounter. It saddened Hiruzen that he could not make Naruto the hero his father had wanted him to be without endangering the boy. He'd done his best to keep rumors of the Jinchuriki quiet, but it was not to be. The information leak still hadn't been discovered even after 2 years of investigations. He sighed again. The boy was much like his father in both appearance and calculating moves. During the encounter at the river, Hiruzen observed many times where the boy had subtly hidden some sort of reaction whenever Hiruzen spoke. There was a cool, calculating mind behind the sunny smiles that the child offered him. There had to be with the way he had skillfully caught the fish and prepared them. Honestly, Naruto reminded him so much of both Kushina and Minato that it wasn't even funny. The first time that Hiruzen heard the word Databeo come out of Naruto's mouth, he felt a lump well up in his throat at the ghost of a red-headed woman that he saw superimpose itself over her son. Hiruzen was simply grateful the boy was so canny and that he hadn't died out on the streets before Hiruzen could do anything about him. Reconstruction efforts had taken up too much of his time and left no time to worry about Konoha's newest Jinchuriki. Minato finished his new gravity seals with a flourish. He had trained his muscle memory enough to finally hold a brush without his hands shaking and was able to draw seals again. The repetitive calligraphy practice without shadow clones had been mind-numbing but sadly necessary. Another interesting thing he discovered about Naruto's body was the nearly endless reserves of energy that seemed to almost overflow from him. Minato had a hard time concentrating on sealing when all he wanted to do was bounce his leg around wildly. For Minato, applying his old combination of gravity and resistance seals for training felt like a step back into his old body. Another bit of familiarity when nothing seemed to be going right for him. Minato still didn't know how to feel about inhabiting his son's body, but so far it had been an interesting experience. On his worst days he would feel like a disgusting body snatcher who sacrificed his son for another life. The self-berating was incomparable to his worst critics, as he outstripped them in harshness by far. On his better days he simply existed and enjoyed the experience of being alive and without the pains he'd accumulated from the Third War. Reminded of his situation, Minato sank into another bout of depression, spiraling deeper and deeper into negative thoughts. Oh dear God, was I truly wrong to seal the Kyuubi in my child? Was I just running away from my responsibilities as a father? No, I can't think like that. Who knows when the masked man will be back for the fox? Or even the Akatsuki. As a matter of fact, the fox would have reformed if I had sealed it into Kushina, and I wouldn't have been able to seal so much chakra into Naruto without the Shiki Fuin. And who knows what if... Suddenly his depression was interrupted by a low growling coming from the back of his mind. Human. When are you going to return my half to me? Huh. Oh, Kyuubi-sama. Minato paused in his brooding and closed his eyes, entering into his mindscape. He could see that the brooding had done no good to the state of his mindscape. The old sewer's waters had become murky and dark, there were more cracks along the walls, and mold had started to grow from the corners. The water level had encroached on the Kyuubi's cage and was slowly rising. Minato eyed the Kyuubi nervously, glancing between the water and the giant fox several times. I'm sorry, I've been busy. I haven't been able to gain access to the shinobi library just yet. Please give me a little more time. Why is this taking so long? I saw the henge. You should be able to simply walk in and research. Yes. That is the plan, except no, you are correct. I should do as you say. I will visit the shinobi library tomorrow. Good. Hurry it up. Hi. Minato acquiesced. Oh, and Kyuubi-sama? What? Thank you. The Kyuubi huffed and turned around, pointedly ignoring Minato's vague smile, simply shooing him away again with a wave of his tails. The next day Minato set out from his apartment with a renewed purpose. He had thoroughly planned out what he needed to do as well as what exactly he needed to research. Minato entered an abandoned alleyway and formed a shadow clone. He was thankful that shadow clones didn't need much chakra control, as he wouldn't even be able to manage a single normal clone in his current state with his growing chakra levels. Sending the clone off to do some menial chores, Minato himself henged into a generic Nara Jounin complete with olive skin, spiky hair, and clan symbol. Minato left the alleyway from the rooftops, roof-hopping like he'd done all his life towards the shinobi archives. He stumbled a few times, mildly unused to the height of his henge, before really getting into the swing of things. He observed the library from a distance, casting his senses out to probe the entire building, ensuring there were no actual members of the Nara clan inside. It wouldn't do for him to be caught so easily after all. Once Minato had made sure that the coast was clear, he hopped off the roofs and set towards the library at a casual lope. Entering the archives, he was greeted by the Chunin running the desk. Hello Nara-san, can I help you with anything today? Hello, I'm fine, thank you very much. Very well, if you need any help looking for something, I'll be here. Thanks. Minato casually slouched towards the Jounin restricted section of the archive, knowing it wouldn't be out of the norm of Nara clansmen to be seen in the section researching. He was glad that his transformation jutsu was solid now, as the desk Chunin were often trained to detect the illusory henge that regular shinobi often used. Minato quickly made a beeline towards the records salvaged from Yuzushio, preparing genjutsu and silence its seals in his pockets as he went. He set up in a small reading nook and prepped the area with his basic privacy seals so that others would overlook his presence. Paying undivided attention to old and musty scrolls was duller than he remembered it to be. Minato couldn't concentrate correctly on the words, and it was a frustrating experience. The scrolls he was investigating were long and dull, but he persevered out of necessity. I'm doing this for my son. I can't be this easily bored, he reminded himself harshly. Seems like the endless stamina he now had during training had a downside to it as well. Hours were spent in the little reading nook, the table in front of Minato slowly filling up with more and more scrolls as he went through them with a barely concealed distaste. He could already tell that his son would not be a paper ninja if he ever returned to his body. It was when he was reading what he thought to be an unrelated scroll to his research out of boredom that he finally discovered what he was looking for. Minato had taken a small break after starting to lose focus and picked up a scroll on Uzumaki shrines in Konoha when there was finally a mention of a Shinigami mask capable of connecting the wearer to the Shinigami. Jolting upright, Minato hurriedly jotted down the text. Finally! A breakthrough! Minato raced home from the archive, practically vibrating in excitement. He could do this. He could fix everything and return this body to its rightful owner. Minato went into an alley and released his henge along with a deep breath. He inhaled, feeling a bright hope for the future, and started running back to his apartment with a bright smile on his face. He was immediately brought down to reality by a civilian who tripped him as he went running by. Sprawled out on the dirt, he couldn't help but bitterly think, oh. Right. People hate my son. This brought another dilemma to mind. What would happen to Naruto after he was returned to his body? Would he be able to take care of himself? Would his soul have experienced growth while in the Shinigami's stomach? More research and planning was definitely needed. Minato returned to his apartment at a much more subdued pace. He didn't know what the Shinigami's stomach was like as an environment for raising a kid, and he worried about the state of Naruto's soul. Minato knew that if the treatment of the villagers got much worse, he could always have the Sandaime reveal Naruto's parentage, so hopefully some of the hate would slightly abate. Minato arrived at his apartment without any further incidents occurring. He dispelled his decoy shadow clone and was assaulted with memories of hours of menial chores, doubling his exhaustion. Minato stumbled onto his bed, head pounding from the day's revelations, no energy left to get up and cook dinner. He lay on his bed unmoving, slowly being lulled to sleep by the soft, comfortable surface when there was a knock at his door. Was it? Who's it? Minato mumbled sleepily as he crawled off his comfortable bed to the door. Opening the door, Minato was greeted by the sight of the Sandaime dressed in his normal Kage robe sans the hat. Minato tilted his head to the side, curious as to what the Hokage could possibly want. This was the second time the man had visited his apartment. Oh, old man. What are you doing here again? Ha! I came to check up on you again, my child. Would you like to join me for dinner? I see you've been hard at work today cleaning. Minato was glad he had set up a decoy shadow clone. It just reconfirmed that Anbu was still guarding him. He hadn't sensed any Anbu while out as the Nara clansman, but it was good to know that he should still be careful with his actions. Well, how did you know that? Do old men really know everything? Minato asked cheekily. Haha, no, that's just me, my child. The Sandaime laughed. So what do you say? Would you join me for some ramen? I know a good stall. Sure, old man. As long as you treat me. Minato snickered. He would eat the old man's wallet out in revenge for sticking his son in an orphanage. Last time the old man had brought him to a generic restaurant where the food didn't interest him. This time he would be treated to something he actually enjoyed. The old man smiled and nodded genially. He set off at a slow, ambling pace. Minato followed along sedately, content to amble along with the old man. He noticed that the glares he received were much tamer when he was next to the Kage, and he stared at the Hokage as they walked. The Sandaime noticed and explained. I am a very important man in this village, young Naruto. I oversee all that goes on in Konoha. That is why the people look at me with such respect. Huh. Okay. Minato could remember the better days when he was on the end of such looks. It was always slightly awkward yet fulfilling each time. He walked down the street to be greeted with such respect-laden eyes. He just wished that they wouldn't treat his son with such disdain. The duo finally turned a corner towards a small stall that Minato recognized immediately. Hit with a wave of nostalgia, Minato stopped to stare at the stall, overwhelmed by the many times he and Kushina had visited the small shop. Naruto, are you alright, my boy? The Sandaime asked, noticing that Naruto had stopped following for a moment. Why yeah. It just smells so good that I was shocked for a moment, you know? Minato hastily said. Oh, indeed, but if you think the smell is good then the taste will blow you away. Well, the food is that good here. Of course. Entering the small shop, the cook at the back hurried out to serve his customers. Hi. Welcome to Ikaraka's. What can I get you? Tota the man paused, staring at Naruto in shock. Minato winced internally, hoping that the kindly old man he had known wouldn't turn his son away like many other shopkeepers had. The man stared intently at Naruto, lost in thought until he remembered where he was. Sorry. I'm Ichiraka Tucci. What can I get for you two today? The man asked, a wide smile blooming on his face. Minato let out a sigh of relief and mirrored the man's sunny smile. Can I get a large pork and miso ramen? Minato asked, barely even glancing at the menu. Of course. First-time customer gets first bowl on the house. Tucci cheerfully replied. I am. We have customers. A large pork and miso ramen. And? The Sandaime chuckled. I'll have the same as young Naruto here. All right. 2 large pork and miso ramen. He then turned around and started furiously cooking himself, making Minato and the Sandaime laugh as his young daughter stumbled out the back. Daewad, why won't you let me cook yet? I am whined piteously. I am dear, you're still learning and you can't serve the customers like that. Tucci laughed as he pulled the noodles with sure experienced hands. At least let me make the stock tomorrow. Sure. But I have to taste it first, he reminded. Minato's smile couldn't get any wider if he tried. The old shop was exactly how he remembered it. Homey and friendly like no other restaurant. He was endlessly grateful to Tucci for treating his son like any other customer, and his hope for Konoha was slightly renewed from the interaction. Thinking about his plans to return Naruto to his body, Minato distractedly slurped his ramen. The Sandaime noticed and decided to see what was troubling the boy so. So Naruto, my boy, what are you thinking so hard over? Minato started, choking on his ramen for a bit. After a heavy coughing fit to dislodge the noodles, he turned to the Sandaime, wiping tears away from his eyes. Minato decided to see what would happen if he asked about Naruto's parentage, just in case things went south with the Shinigami. Nothing much, old man, just wondering who my parents were. Say, you know a lot of stuff, old man. Did you know my parents? This time it was the Sandaime's turn to choke on his food. Minato calmly waited for the old man to stop coughing before asking again. Well? Did you know my parents? I'm sorry, my child, I do not know who your parents are, but I'm sure that they were wonderful people, the Sandaime said, patting his chest. Minato frowned in disappointment. He didn't have too many hopes that the Sandaime would actually reveal anything, but he'd hoped for a different answer instead of I don't know. Meanwhile, Tucci looked to be holding back tears as he stared at Naruto sadly. Minato simply kept his promise to eat the Sandaime's wallet out. The old man had watched in suspended horror as he demolished bowl after bowl of ramen. Tucci seemed to get more and more gleeful after each emptied bowl, and Ayam was simply stunned that someone so small could fit so much food in their stomach. Minato suspected that his increased appetite had something to do with Uzumaki genes, as he could remember Kushina eating just as much normally. It was interesting to him that he had increased metabolism and stamina in exchange for a lack of concentration and excess energy at all times. Useful for a ninja, but not so much for a researcher like he had been. After Minato had finished torturing the Sandaime's wallet, he returned to his apartment to plan out how he would return his son's body. According to the scroll he found, there was an Uzumaki Hall of No Masks that contained a special Shinigami mask that allowed the wearer to channel the death god. The wearer could then direct the god to slice his stomach open, undoing the Reaper death seal and freeing whatever was in his stomach. As a price, the wearer would then be sacrificed to the Shinigami, as the wound on the Shinigami would transfer to the mask wearer. Minato needed to prepare a location to seal the Kyuubi's in half within his son and somehow survive long enough to be able to seal his own in half in Naruto's mindscape. Despite Minato's fondness for Konoha, he just didn't trust the villagers not to mistreat his son anymore. He would have to somehow remain with his son to take care of him in case anyone tried to harm his son. As soon as Minato could finish drawing up the seals to contain the Kyuubi's chakra and create an array to contain his consciousness, he would transfer the rights to his body back to its rightful owner. In the meantime, he would continue just as he had before, take care of the body to the best of his abilities and start Naruto's shinobi training early. One day Shursui stumbled upon an interesting scene as he entered the training grounds. Naruto was balanced with one finger on the tip of a saban upside down on top of the running creek that flowed through the middle of the training grounds with various leaves and miscellaneous objects stuck all over him. Hey, what ya doing over there? I'm practicing my chakra control, Shursui-san. Okay, don't hurt yourself there, buddy. I'm fine. You looking to become an Irionin, Naruto? Huh. No? Why would you think that? Well, it's just that the only shinobi I know who do such ridiculous chakra control exercises are medic neens. Why are you so hooked on chakra control anyways? Shouldn't a kid your age be focused on stretching chakra coils for larger reserves? Minato laughed. He laughed so hard he lost control and fell into the creek with a splash. Sputtering, he climbed out of the creek, leaves still stuck to his skin. Shursui-san, I probably will never need to worry about my chakra reserves. I can perform over 100 shadow clones and not be tired. Shursui's eyes bugged out. No way. You're a tiny pipsqueak. I can barely manage two. I just got lucky with genetics, I guess. I am an Uzumaki after all. At this, Minato felt a bout of pain. His son would never be able to learn about Uzumaki traditions and customs now that the clan was all gone. Ah, you're right, a real Uzumaki, huh? You don't exactly have the hair for it, though? Ah, yeah, it comes from my father's side, I guess. Shursui tilted his head curiously. Speaking of which, who are your parents? And where are they? Shouldn't they be worried about their kid being out all the time? Ah, my parents are dead. I've never known who they were. Minato replied truthfully. Shursui squinted at Naruto for a minute. Say, when did you say your birthday was again? Minato's sweat dropped. I never did say. It's October 10th. Shursui leaned back, closing his eyes. Huh? How interesting. Shursui stared intently at Naruto and nodded his head. I understand now. Huh? What do you understand? Minato had an idea of what Shursui understood. Nothing, don't worry about it, pipsqueak. Okay if you say so, Shursui-san. Minato was relieved that Shursui was a smart kid. He had really found a wonderful young shinobi. Say, Shursui-san, what do you think of getting some more training to become even faster? Huh? You know of better training, Squirt? Shursui asked doubtfully. Yeah. If you use weights or even resistance seals while training, you can increase your speed by a lot. Who? You might be onto something there. I've never thought of that. Looks like I need to get some weights or something. Shursui-san, I'm an Uzumaki. I can draw you resistance seals. You would do that for me? Damn, thank you, pipsqueak. You have to stop calling me pipsqueak, thought. Minato deadpanned. Shursui smiled sunnily. Is that it? That's easy. Thanks, Bean Sprout. Minato let out a frustrated whine and face-palmed while Shursui laughed, slapping Minato on the back. The kid was scary smart. It seemed that everything Shursui taught the kid already knew. It only took 1 or 2 tries for the kid to get everything down, and it was honestly quite intimidating. In fact, whenever Shursui tried teaching the kid something, he himself ended up learning a thing or two from the kid instead. Honestly, if Shursui didn't know Itachi, he would have been thoroughly unnerved by the child genius he had in front of him. It relieved Shursui that Naruto could still act like a kid sometimes. Sometimes he regretted asking Naruto to train with him, simply because he was worried over the kid's lost childhood. But he didn't regret getting to know the blonde ball of sunshine. The kid always had a quip for him, and had a smile that would put the sun to shame. So Shursui worried. He didn't know what pushed the kid so hard, and he'd heard of what the young boy contained from well-meaning clansmen who warned him away from the Jinchuriki. It seemed that no one cared about Naruto, and the few times they went into the village together, the glares and harsh treatment the child received made his stomach churn. Honestly, he would have been worried that Naruto would abandon Konoha with how he was treated, but he knew the boy personally, and Naruto seemed to take it all in stride. Shursui watched Naruto train for a while. He'd had a question that had been on his mind for the past few days, and he finally found time to voice his thoughts. Hey, Naruto. Yeah? What's up, Shursui-san? Ma, enough with the san already, just Shursui is fine. How many times have I told you that? Haha, sorry, it's just a habit. What did you need, Shursui? Why do you train so hard, Naruto? Huh? What are you training for? Shouldn't you be enjoying being a kid? You aren't a clan child, so you have time to be a kid for a while longer. Actually, even clan children don't train as hard as you know? Itachi doesn't count. Shouldn't you be playing with friends? Naruto laughed awkwardly and rubbed the back of his neck. Shursui, I don't really have any friends aside from you. What? Shursui exclaimed. That was ridiculous. The kid was remarkably talented and sunny as all hell. People should be tumbling over themselves to make friends with him. Oh. Except. There was that. That's not good, kid. You need to make some friends, get connections, otherwise what do you even fight for? I need to introduce you to Itachi. I think you would like him, Shursui mused. Naruto simply nodded. Shursui didn't notice that he never answered the original question and carried on making plans to introduce the two geniuses. Minato himself had a hard time answering the question. After all, he originally trained himself into the ground to gain some form of acknowledgement and praise, but then he fought to protect what was precious to him after meeting Kushina. But Kushina was gone and he had succeeded in protecting Konoha with his life. What did he fight for as Naruto? That's it. I'll bring Itachi to our training sessions. You'll see, kid. He's a lot like you in a way. Scary smart, oddly mature, and skilled as all hell. You two will get along like peas in a pod, I promise. Minato smiled. The answer was right in front of him. He would continue to protect what was precious to him. Shursui's innocent smile was worth the life he had sacrificed. This was enough for him, and according to Shursui he would be making new bonds as well. The future was bright. He hoped his son would share similar sentiments, and gain many friends. Days slowly passed as Minato doubled down on his training and seal creation. Buying sealing supplies was easy now that Minato could henge reliably. He had repurposed his cave on the Nara compound into a sealing chamber that was heavily warded to keep the Kyuubi's chakra from leaking out. Minato also prepared various contingency seals just in case any of the warding seals were to break and alert the shinobi of Konoha. He had worked out a deal with the Kyuubi so that the Kyuubi would heal his body once he sliced open the Shinigami's stomach. This way neither Naruto nor the Kyuubi would die in the process of unsealing, and that left Minato to take the brunt of the sacrifice. Minato felt it. His renewed hope for the future was burning bright. He would succeed and his son would become the child of prophecy that he believed in at his final moments. Minato woke up with a smile on his face that could rival the sun. Today was the day. Today was when his preparations had finally come to an end. He would be able to guide his son in the future as the rightful owner of his now highly trained body returned. Minato glanced out of the window, noting that it was a rather overcast day and seemed to be on the verge of rain. Clouds were heavy in the sky and it was rather windy outside. But to Minato, even the foreboding weather couldn't bring him down from his bright mood. Minato quickly left a shadow clone in his apartment as he set off to the location of the Uzumaki Mask Hall. He hinged into the same generic Nara clansman as the day he infiltrated the library, and practically skipped the whole way to the hall on the outskirts of the village. Entering the dilapidated hall, Minato quickly came upon a wall of Shinigami masks. The wall was painted with black flames along the bottom, and each mask differed slightly from the rest. Every mask was lovingly rendered in almost grotesque amounts of detail, all with the same grimace of an expression. The rows and rows of masks sent sweat drops down Minato's face. He wasn't quite sure which mask was the correct one. The scroll had only mentioned one specific mask after all. It was truly an example of hiding a tree in a forest. Minato quickly closed his eyes and dropped into his mindscape. The Kyuubi was sitting up paying close attention to the proceedings as this was the day he became whole again. Hey Kyuubi-sama, would you happen to know which mask is the correct one? Minato asked tentatively. Why would I know? You are a censor and a sage, are you not? Just pick the most ominous feeling one. The Kyuubi deadpan, leaning his chin on a paw. Minato's sweat dropped and left his mindscape rather put out. He closed his eyes and opened up his senses to the wall of masks. Just like the Kyuubi said, there was one mask out of the rest that exuded a foreboding sensation similar to the cold consuming feeling of the Shinigami. Reaching up and taking the mask in hand, Minato felt a chill down his spine at the sensation of power contained in the mask. Taking the mask back to his hideout at the Nara clan compound was easier with the Nara Henjan. Minato wasn't even questioned when he casually walked past the Chunin guarding the clan compounds. As he made his way over to his cave, he noted that the weather seemed to be worsening, but it wouldn't dampen his good mood. Minato entered the cave and activated 13 layers of seals just in case things went south with the resealing of the Kyuubi. He prepared his body for the ritual, taking off his white shirt and painting the necessary seals for sealing the in half of the Kyuubi onto his stomach. The sealing would require a second layer of seals to be added to the original 8-sign seal. Minato had added an additional 6 seals over the original seal prongs to keep the even seal balanced. Holding the mask in his hands, Minato took a deep breath and dropped into his mindscape again. Looking up at the great fox, who could barely conceal his anticipation, he asked, "So Kyuubi-sama, are you ready for this?" "Am I ready to be made whole again?" "Of course. Get on with it, human," the fox practically roared. "Of course, are you sure of your role in this?" The Kyuubi rolled his eyes. Yes, I will keep both of us alive while you grapple with the Shinigami for your son." Minato gave the Kyuubi a genuine smile. "Thank you." Minato opened his eyes to the real world once more. Taking another fortifying breath, he placed the mask over his face. Instantly he was overcome with the chilling aura of the Shinigami. Minato grunted as he channeled the Shinigami's chakra, a familiar white-robed figure forming behind him. The figure was ghastly in appearance, a cruel, emancipated grin etched across its face with long white horns atop its head and long, shaggy white hair. It removed the knife it held in its mouth, slowly dragging the knife across its stomach in a long, bloody slash. A bright burst of pure red-yin chakra leapt forth from the apparition's stomach as Minato hacked up blood, a slash, mirrored to the slash on the death god, carving itself into his body. Minato shakily performed the hand signs necessary for his sealing jutsu. The floating yin chakra was sucked into the seal on his stomach forcefully, and Minato gagged as it burned into his skin and chakra coils. He fell over clutching his bleeding stomach in pain, calling out in a weakened voice. Kyuubi! Your promise! The Kyuubi had been relishing the feeling of becoming whole once more. He distractedly sent just enough chakra to Minato to heal him, more engrossed in the feeling of his returned power. Meanwhile, Minato was writhing on the ground in pain, wondering if his sealing had worked as the roiling chakra battled beneath his skin. He tore the mask off his face and flung it to a far corner of the cave while he grabbed his stomach. After several tense minutes of agonizing pain, Minato let out a gusty breath as the pain began to slowly recede. His chakra coils had finally stretched enough to accommodate the rest of the Kyuubi's chakra. This was why Jinchuriki could only be made while the host was young. The subject needed to have flexible enough chakra coils to endure the sudden addition of another source of chakra. Otherwise, there could be dire consequences from ruptured chakra coils. Minato panted, pushing himself upright from his fetal position. He sat in a lotus position and delved into his mindscape once more. Arriving at his mindscape, he immediately took in the stark differences in the scenery. The sewer walls looked cracked and crumbling, and the pipes along the walls were leaking much more than usual. The biggest difference was that now the cage that contained the Kyuubi was twice its original size, holding a much larger fox who seemed to be radiating smugness. Kyuubi-sama, have you seen my son? I'm afraid I might have sealed him in with your yin half when my consciousness didn't swap places with him. The Kyuubi gazed pensively at Minato. Several times he made as if to speak only to hesitate in the end. He tilted his head considering his next words carefully, and finally spoke. Minato. Your son is gone. Minato started for 2 reasons. This was the first time that the Kyuubi had referred to him by name, and wait, what? Minato laughed nervously. Excuse me? I don't think I heard you quite right, haha. Fool. You heard me correctly. Your son is gone. His soul merged with your own that night. He is not in the Shinigami's stomach. The Kyuubi shifted so he was lying down, staring eye level with Minato. Minato fell to his knees, mind whirling in shock. But how? No. He can't be? He was perfectly fine during the sealing, Minato protested. The amount of pressure from my chakra combined with my killing intent was too much for a newborn baby. He died shortly after being brought too close to me. His soul collapsed and latched onto yours, merging with you and the seal. Minato stared blankly at the Kyuubi, mind processing the cold words slowly. He suddenly rose to his feet, angrily stomping up to the Kyuubi's cage. You knew! You knew from the moment I gave you my memories! You knew, and you allowed me on this fool's errand! He roared. The Kyuubi rose up to his full height and roared back. Of course I knew. Of course I allowed you on this so-called fool's errand. I wanted my other half back. I am not your friend. I am your prisoner. Minato deflated immediately, the sudden rush of anger leaving him exhausted and empty. Was it me then? Was it my fault for taking my child to be the Jinchuriki? He couldn't stay angry at the Kyuubi. The Kyuubis had just been used as a weapon that terrible night. The Kyuubi merely watched Minato in silence as the man proceeded to collapse in front of him, weakened legs finally giving out on him. Outside in the real world, drops of rain started to fall from the sky. If it helps. He only died when I tried to kill him and focused the full force of my killing intent on him. Otherwise he might have lived. And Minato broke. The stress of being reborn into his son's body, the stress of not being able to properly mourn for his wife, the stress of the village moving on without him, the stress of having to train for a future of chaos, it was all too much. Minato sobbed shamelessly in front of an uncaring audience. He wailed and cried for his lost family and shattered hopes. Unknown to Minato, his body began to exude an ominous red chakra. The chakra slowly bubbled up and began forming a shroud around his body. The rain falling outside began to pick up speed. Lightning flashed and thunder boomed in the distance. Minato considered the harsh treatment he had to endure from his beloved village. He considered the bitter loneliness and biting hatred he experienced. He remembered the cold neglect and need for self-sufficiency. And He hated. At this moment, Minato truly hated the village of Konoha and everything it stood for. The shroud of chakra solidified and began to quickly form ears and three tails. Minato considered all that he had done for the sake of Konoha. He remembered bloody missions, distasteful tortures, and most of all, sacrificing the family that he had finally obtained with his own 2 hands. A fourth tail formed with an explosion of chakra, tearing through 4 of Minato's pre-prepared seals. The body stood up, empty inside, just a shell of hate and anger. It lashed out against the walls of the cave, leaving great gouges behind from where the claws had struck. Minato remembered that fateful day during the Third Shinobi War. The day he earned his moniker. Konoha was losing. There was no way around it. They were being pushed back by the IWA forces and there was no way to stop the onslaught. But there was one. An experimental jutsu that one distinctive jounin had been working on for years. Tri-pronged kunai rained down from the skies in droves and scattered across the battlefield in random locations. The IWA disregarded the ineffective attack and continued their charge forwards. Suddenly there were flashes of yellow across the whole battlefield. Too fast for the eye to see, there was a flash and an IWA jounin fell to the ground with a hole through his neck. Flash. A throat slit. Flash. A kunai to the brain. Flash. A shuriken to the neck. Flash. A Rasengan to the chest. Flash. A swift decapitation. Flash. So much death, Minato blankly thought. Body moving on autopilot to take down the next shinobi in the most efficient manner. His body didn't stop moving until the whole battlefield was silent. Konoha shinobi were staring at him in wonder and hope. IWA shinobi were fleeing for their lives in panic, screaming at the sight of a tri-pronged kunai that signified swift death. His second moniker was one that he was not proud of. The Grim Reaper of IWA. He'd reaped the lives of many that day. They claimed that he killed over 1,000 shinobi that day, but Minato felt that he'd killed more than 1,000. Each slash, each stab was engraved on his memories in a flash of the world passing by. It was simply too much for a single man to bear. But he didn't bear it alone. He had Kushina. But now, what did he have? What did he fight for? Why did he even try anymore? The creature that was his body rampaged through the small cave, tearing at the walls and ground with great furious sweeps. It had 6 tails waving angrily behind it, Minato's last 3 warding seals barely hanging on to existence. Stop your pathetic weeping already. This is shameful. This is the man who is called the Yellow Flash. This is the man who sealed away the great and terrible Kyuubi no Yoko. Pathetic. Minato looked up at the Kyuubi in shock. Didn't you reaffirm your resolve long ago? Who are you wallowing in pain in front of me? Certainly not the man who split me in 2 and sealed me away. Certainly not the man who saved his village time and time again. Minato looked at the Kyuubi in a new light. Was the Kyuubi actually comforting him? The Kyuubi had pulled him out of his depressive thoughts once more. Minato's body had paused in its rampaging, the very last warding seal keeping him from discovery hanging on by a thread. Indeed, Minato had reaffirmed himself when he was training with Shursui. And suddenly Minato remembered the good times that he had in Konoha, the reasons he'd loved Konoha. Shursui's mischievous smile, Kushina's bright laughter, Tuchi's wry grins, the Sandame's wise smirks. There was so much good in Konoha that he had experienced as well. Minato couldn't allow the cycle of hate to consume him as well. He understood the villagers' pain, and he didn't need to add to it. He would have to live for his son's sake and carry on in his place. He could not afford to be consumed by despair just yet. There was so much to be done for the good of Konoha. What would Kushina even think of him if he let this overwhelm him? He would just have to do his very best to make his son and wife round of the life that he was granted. This would be his second chance to do some good for Konoha. He would honor Naruto's sacrifice by living life to the fullest extent that he could. It would have been what Kushina wanted as well. It was what he himself had wanted for his son. Minato lowered his head in thought. He definitely needed time to sort out his thoughts and feelings about his new situation, but at least he had survived the Shinigami ritual. Wiping his tears away and looking up at the Kyuubi again, he inclined his head respectfully. Thank you very much, Kyuubi-sama, you have once again helped me in a time of great darkness. The Minato leaned back pensively. You said we weren't friends, but how about we change that? What? We should start over, any? It's very nice to meet you, Kyuubi. My name is Namikaze Minato, or well, I guess Uzumaki Naruto now. What's your name? It just occurred to me that Kyuubi is just a title, correct? The Kyuubi spluttered and gaped at this strange human. The man had just performed a complete 180 with his emotions and was now smiling cheerily at the fox. Just one moment he had been mourning his lost wife and son, and then the next he was trying to make friends with the Kyuubi of all things. Still in a daze, the Kyuubi managed to instinctively respond Kurama, not really knowing what he was saying. Well, it's nice to meet you, Kurama-san. Thank you very much for your help up till now. Minato bowed to the fox and gathered his wits, compartmentalizing everything he needed to work out for another time. Kurama was still in shock, not registering the words coming out of Minato's mouth as Minato turned to leave. What even was his life? Minato quickly opened his eyes to the real world once more. The cave was in ruins, the walls had been cracked and shattered, and the very last seal burned itself out just as Minato returned to sanity. He rushed to suppress all of his chakra. It would be bad if he were to be discovered in this state. He gazed in wonder at the destruction around him. Minato had no idea what had happened while he was lost in misery inside his mindscape. Minato checked over his body quickly, no changes except the additional 6 prongs over the 8-sign seal. Perhaps it was an escape attempt by the Kyuubi that took advantage of his weakened emotional state. Letting out a sigh of relief, Minato prepared to leave the cave behind. Though it was storming outside, it brought a perfect cover for his next plan. Minato set up a few hastily constructed explosive seals to collapse the cave and hide any evidence. He grabbed the mask and hightailed it out of the cave, detonating the low-grade seals as he went. Minato hoped that the cave collapse would be blamed on the storm that was currently soaking him to the bone. Shikaku-san! Anara Chunin burst into Shikaku's office where the man was playing a round of shogi with his son, Shikamaru. Huh! What's the rush? He said lazily, glancing over to the panting Chunin. Some of the compound guards have reported strange roaring and other sounds coming from the eastern section of the forest. Ma, how troublesome. Send some genin to check it out. It's probably nothing. Maybe a landslide or something happened during the storm, Shikaku said, moving a shogi piece. Hi. Oh, and Shikamaru, check. TCH. Troublesome old man. The small child said, pouting cutely. I'm not that old yet, was the indignant response. The next day started out pretty subdued for Minato. He'd spent the night mourning and didn't get very much sleep at all. Still, he dragged his aching body over to the fridge and had a meager breakfast of fruit and milk. Collapsing on his couch in a heap, he decided that he deserved a day to mope around and cry. He could be strong tomorrow, but today just wasn't going to be a good day. Minato stared blankly at the ceiling, trying to work up the will to get up and at least move to his bed. What he really wanted to do was just sleep the day away, but guilty thoughts occupied most of his mind. He'd worked out most of his problems the day before, but tackling them would be a whole other problem. Minato sighed. He just didn't have the will to do anything. Energy he had plenty of, and it was really a horrible feeling. Being giddy and energetic enough to want to run around Konoha until he dropped, but the desire to actually do something? Well, it just didn't exist. Finally managing to convince himself to at least clean up, Minato dragged himself over to his tiny bathroom. He stared at himself in the mirror. Naruto looked a lot like him. It was disconcerting how much he looked like Minato, but at the same time, not like Minato. For one, Naruto had a rounder face and rounder eyes. He also had his hair much shorter than how he used to keep it. Minato guessed that if he grew Naruto's hair out and lost the whiskers, he would look just like a young Minato. He supposed it was a good thing that the matron at the orphanage insisted on a short haircut. Minato contorted his face in a variety of expressions, finding Kushina's smile and laugh lines as he stretched his face. Struck by another bout of depression, Minato slouched over to his bed and collapsed on it in a lump. He lay there unmoving and uncaring of the time that passed him by. This time it was the wall that he stared blankly at. Letting out another despondent sigh, Minato turned over, hoping to at least get some sleep. He'd laid on his bed for several long hours when there was a knock at the door. Opening up his chakra sensing, Minato felt that it was Sure at the door. He'd also brought someone along with him, apparently. Minato slouched over to the door and opened it a crack. Peering out and feigning surprise, he asked, Sure-san? What are you doing here? Sure laughed and opened the door the whole way, slapping Naruto on the shoulder. Come on, shorty. Stop with the san already. And don't tell me you forgot about our training today. I even brought Itachi with me. He pointed exuberantly at the quiet-looking genin with distinctive tear troughs and long dark hair tied in a ponytail standing behind him. Minato looked at the energetic Chunin in fond exasperation. He would have continued to waste the day away if Sure hadn't shown up. Sorry, Sure, I wasn't feeling well today. Hold on a minute, I'll go get changed and then we can go. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Sure excitedly pumped his fists. Pulling back into his apartment, Minato rushed to throw on a navy short-sleeved shirt, sleeveless orange hoodie, and tan shorts. The trio then left his apartment together towards Trading Grounds 41, and Itachi introduced himself to Naruto. "Hello Naruto-san, my name is Uchiha Itachi. Shursui has told me much about you." "Hello Itachi-san, it's very nice to meet you. I hope Shursui's been telling you good things at least." "Do not fear, it has all been about your training prowess," Itachi sedately responded. "Well, that's a relief to hear." Minato chuckled. "Hey! What kind of person do you think I am?" Shursui dramatically cried. Both younger boys shared a laugh at Shursui's expense. "So Itachi-san, how do you know Shursui?" "I met him by accident at Training Grounds 41 one day," Minato asked out of curiosity. Shursui had mentioned the Uchiha heir a few times during training, but he never mentioned how they met. "I met Shursui-san while training. I was practicing my kunai techniques when Shursui appeared." "Ah, I remember that day. I was so surprised a young kid like you could pull off such a complicated maneuver." Shursui reminisced happily. "Ah, I see. I rather like kunai techniques myself. Would you be able to show me the technique?" asked Minato with his eyes shining in delight. Sure, Pipsqueak. Speaking of which, could you draw the resistance seals you talked about last time for Itachi too? Wouldn't want him to get left behind by our training after all." Shursui laughed. "Sure. I'll have them ready by next week. But please don't spread around the fact that I can draw seals, Shursui-san. I don't want people to know yet." Shursui was confused. It was like this all the time with Naruto. He was always so secretive and paranoid. He often made sure that no one was spying on them when they trained. "Huh. Sure, no problem, I haven't told anyone yet, but any reason in particular you don't want people to know about your skills?" Minato winked cheekily at Shursui. "Don't you know Shursui? Deception is a shinobi's best friend." Shursui huffed a laugh and ruffled Naruto's hair, and Itachi snorted next to him. Reaching the trading grounds, Itachi helped Shursui set up a variety of kunai targets, and then Shursui took up a position in the middle of them holding 8 kunai in his hands. He leapt up into the air and 8 flashes of light flew from his hands towards different directions. Thunk! 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 Cling! Thunk! The kunai landed one after another in each target. One kunai ricocheting off another into a target in Shursui's blind spot. Minato had stars in his eyes over the simple technique. While he himself had been a master of shuriken jutsu in his lifetime, it was always great to see new techniques. Ooh. Let me try. Haha, sure Pipsqueak, it's your turn. Itachi and Shursui then watched in shock as Naruto appeared to completely nail the technique on his first try. Minato himself was slightly dissatisfied. He still hadn't completely trained up Naruto's body to his high standards. Whoa! Shrimp, first try too! Shursui exclaimed. No Shursui, not first try, see the last kunai is only on the edge of the target, not the center. Minato replied in a disheartened manner. Shursui patted Naruto on the back. Still, that's impressive for a pipsqueak. Itachi meanwhile was looking at Naruto in a new light. It appeared to Itachi that he'd found a new training partner aside from Shursui. Say Naruto-san, how old are you? Itachi asked. Huh. Oh. I'm 5 years old. Minato replied. Has it really already been 5 years? He thought sadly. Itachi hummed. You are around the same age as my younger brother. Ah, is that so? What's his name? It's Sasuke. Minato felt a lance of pain shoot through him at the name. He remembered Kushina's telling him about Mikoto's child who she hoped Naruto would become good friends with. Unfortunately, due to Naruto being placed in an orphanage, Minato didn't have the time to worry about friendships for Naruto. Well, it should be his friendships now, shouldn't it? Minato smiled. He would just have to make new bonds just like he had done with Shursui. So what do we have on the training menu for today? Minato asked Shursui. Shursui considered the question for a moment. Honestly, he didn't really have anything planned except for maybe a bit of sparring between the three. You can already do the Academy 3, right, Naruto? Minato's sweat dropped. Actually, I can't seem to do a simple bunshin. Shursui stared at Minato in shock while Itachi, who had no clue of the insane control exercises Naruto subjected himself to, simply stared blankly at the whiskered boy. How? You do so many control exercises. How can you not form a simple bunshin? Shursui yelled in confusion. Minato hung his head and simply formed the hand seals. Sheep, snake, tiger, letting the results speak for themselves. Poof, a wilted and washed-out copy of Naruto appeared beside him before slumping over and dramatically dying in another cloud of chakra smoke. Now Minato himself had many theories as to why neither Naruto nor Kushina could perform the clone jutsu properly, most of them related to the cube's presence. He just couldn't exactly explain that to Shursui and Itachi despite the identity of the Jinchuriki being an open secret. Itachi hummed and activated his Sharingan, gesturing to Naruto to perform the jutsu again. Shursui saw and immediately copied him, activating his own Sharingan. Minato obliged, forming the hand seals and channeling as little chakra as he could into the technique. Once again a deformed white copy of Naruto formed beside him. Itachi and Shursui blinked simultaneously, turning to stare at each other, and then at Naruto. Minato shifted uncomfortably, disconcerted under the twin Sharingan gazes. Well? He asked, bouncing from foot to foot in an attempt to control his boundless energy. Shursui hesitated to respond before finally saying, Why, you're all well, your chakra is too dense for the Bunshin. You will most likely never be able to perform many genjutsu as well. Itachi nodded next to him sympathetically. Minato nodded in thought. He'd never used many genjutsu in his life before Naruto, and he hadn't really planned on learning very many in this new life. It did mean that he would have to remaster breaking genjutsu though. Well that's okay, I still have the shadow clone. Itachi perked up in interest at this. You can perform the shadow clone as well, how did you learn it? Minato's sweat dropped. Shursui had just accepted the fact without a second thought after he'd performed the technique in front of Minato one day and Minato had remarked that he could do it as well. Oh well, I saw Jounin do it once and copied the hand seals until I could do it. Itachi was surprised. This child had done exactly what he had done to learn the shadow clone, but he accomplished it without the aid of the Sharingan. This was no easy feat. Yeah. And get this, Itachi. He can perform over 100 and not get tired, Shursui added excitedly. I failed to see how, was the droll response. Shursui slapped Itachi's arm. Didn't you see him with your Sharingan? The kid is ridiculous. If you don't believe me, I can show you, said Minato, wryly amused by the proceedings. Itachi simply nodded, crossing his arms over his chest. Minato formed the signature cross-shaped hand seal and shouted Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Suddenly the forest clearing was filled with orange smirking blondes. They all waved hello at the stunned Genin and Chunin before popping. Minato swayed slightly from the memory feedback of so many clones dispelling at once. This time Itachi was staring at Naruto with wide eyes and a slightly flabbergasted expression. Minato chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his head. Too much? Eheed. Shursui pointed indignantly at Naruto, jabbing at his chest with each word. You see. And he's not even winded. Unfair. Cheats. Ridiculousness. But Shursui, you're the one who taught me that a shinobi doesn't cheat, they just win, Minato pointed out. Shursui pointed even harder at Naruto, practically jabbing his finger in Naruto's face. You. Shush. Minato broke down laughing at that. He heard a few chuckles coming from the stoic Itachi's direction as he cackled. Shursui groaned and dragged a hand down his face. He stared at the two others from between his fingers. Then he remembered his original goal. Hey, you two! He yelled, popping back to his cheery attitude. Yes? Yes, Shursui-san? Itachi, enough already, Naruto just stopped with the san, not you two. Shursui moaned, then he bounced up into a fighting stance. We should have a three-way spar. Minato's eyes narrowed, honing in on Itachi and Shursui, sending shivers down their backs. It was like his eyes had suddenly turned into chips of ice. They could tell that Naruto was ready for anything. Any rules, Shursui? Naruto asked innocently. Yeah? No maiming, and first to surrender loses, I guess. The three boys took up fighting stances, 2 textbook Uchiha interceptor stances and 1 academy stance. All three eyed a leaf that was gently floating downward. As soon as the leaf touched the ground, they all disappeared in a burst of speed. Minato sat on the branch of a large tree, eyes darting in every direction for a possible attack. A brace of shuriken came flying towards Naruto, sending him jumping away to the right into Shursui, who twisted and kicked out at him. Naruto blocked the kick with and was sent flying to the ground. He hit the ground with a roll as Shursui chased after him. Naruto threw 3 kunai directly at Shisui as he lunged towards Naruto. Shisui pulled out his own kunai and deflected the 3 kunai into Itachi, who had been silently sneaking up to Shisui. Itachi simply dodged the kunai, throwing his own shuriken towards Naruto and leaping up to engage Shisui in a furious taijutsu bout. Minato was a bit peeved having been ridden off so quickly. He flashed through hand signs, futon, great breakthrough. Minato sent a great burst of wind towards the fighting duo. The two boys turned toward the wind bullet simultaneously and leapt apart from each other, narrowly dodging the bullet which drilled into the ground, sending great chunks of dirt everywhere. Itachi retaliated, his hand seal speed so fast that Minato could barely make them out. Katon, great fireball. A giant fireball flew at Naruto, who Kawarimi'd out of the way, leaving a scorched log behind him. "Hey! Don't leave me out of this!" yelled Shisui, who flipped through signs until a Katon, Phoenix Flower Jutsu, was flying at both Itachi and Naruto. Minato used another great breakthrough to block the fire, but hidden inside of the flames was shuriken that he had to Kawarimi for. Itachi had simply avoided the fire and shuriken combo and rushed at Naruto as he was dodging Shisui's attacks. Minato threw 4 kunai at Itachi, using his newly learned technique to bounce a kunai into Itachi's blind spot. Itachi ducked his head, letting the kunai sail by harmlessly, and threw a flurry of blows at Naruto. Dodging around the blows, Minato thought this kid's good too. As expected of someone who trains with Shisui, he flipped backwards for space, throwing out more shuriken to discourage Itachi from approaching. Shisui used this opportunity to throw wire-wrapped shuriken at Itachi. Itachi leapt to the left, eyes widening as Shisui pulled the wires, curving the shuriken trajectory towards Itachi. Smirking, Itachi ran through the hand seals for Kawarimi at a lightning-fast speed, swapping places with a wide-eyed Naruto. "Why? I'll get you for this, you know!" Naruto screamed as he wildly ducked the shuriken and wires by bending over backwards. He flipped up and created 2 shadow clones. One ran off to fight Shisui and the other ran towards Itachi. Shisui baited his clone into a wire trap and swiftly dispelled it, only encounter a new clone that surprised him by kicking him towards a tree. Shisui rebounded off the tree and shined straight at the clone, throwing a brace of shuriken at the clone as he went. Shuriken and Shisui crashing into the clone simultaneously caused the clone to pop in a cloud of smoke, blocking Shisui's vision for a precious second. Itachi meanwhile engaged his Naruto clone in a bout of taijutsu, assessing his skills with Sharingan rapidly spinning in his eyes. Blocking a high kick from Naruto, he swept his left foot out to catch Naruto's pivoting foot, but Naruto leapt into the air to aim another kick at Itachi. This caused Itachi to block with his arm, taking the heavy impact with a grunt. Minato watched as Itachi dispatched his clone from where he was sitting on top of a tied-up Shisui. He hopped off the struggling Chunin and dashed towards Itachi. Itachi then proceeded to perform a brutal takedown on Naruto, flipping over him and grabbing his shoulder, throwing Naruto to the ground. The results of the spar revealed a few interesting things. First of all, Shisui and Naruto were both faster than Itachi, but Itachi had better taijutsu compared to them. Between Shisui and Naruto, Naruto was the faster one, but Shisui was much more adept at shunshin. They were all equally matched in ninjutsu, but none of the fighters had revealed their full repertoires. Itachi stared at Naruto in contemplation for a while after the spar. Opening and closing his mouth a few times, he finally managed to ask the question that had been on his mind. "Naruto-san, I don't mean to be rude, but why haven't you graduated the academy yet? You are obviously skilled enough to pass the exams." Minato tilted his head and considered the question. Why hadn't he decided graduate just yet? He stood in silence for a worryingly long time before he answered Itachi. "Itachi-san, perhaps it is because I have the luxury of not needing to graduate early. I would like to enjoy my childhood despite having filled it with non-stop training." Itachi nodded. He understood this very well. He had been forced to graduate early from the pressures of his father and the demands of the clan elders. If clan duties had not demanded it of him, he may not have chosen to graduate either. "Well, it's late enough, I guess. That was a good spar. You really caught me off guard with that clone there, Pipsqueak," Shisui said. "I'll walk you home, Naruto. Itachi, you go on ahead of me, I'll catch up." "Of course, it was very nice meeting you today, Naruto-san. I hope we continue to have good relations in the future," said Itachi, dusting himself off. "Yeah, for sure. It was great meeting you too, Itachi. I hope we'll be good friends too." And so the 3 boys set off on their ways. Shisui spent the majority of his walk with Naruto in a content silence. Every so often, though, he would ward off some of the more malicious glares that the villagers sent towards Naruto with his own Sharingan-enhanced stare. "Thank you, Shisui, for being such a good friend," Minato said earnestly. He was honestly thankful that Shui had taken the time out of his day to search for him and effectively pull him out of his depression, and now he was worried for Naruto's well-being in the village. "Aw, Pipsqueak, don't say that, I'll get embarrassed," said Shui, rubbing the back of his head awkwardly. "I really mean it, you know. I'm really grateful to have met you. I just want you to know that." Minato smiled sunnily at Shui, who squinted his eyes at the brightness radiating off of Naruto. Shui pulled Naruto into a gentle hug. "Thanks, I guess. I'm glad that I know you as well, Pipsqueak." Minato simply hugged Shui back and nodded into his chest. "Good night, Shui. See you tomorrow." "Yeah. Night, Pipsqueak." Minato just palmed his face at the name and sighed as Shui gave a cheeky smile and wave and then disappeared in his signature shunshin. Days seemed to fly by as Shui, Itachi and Naruto all trained together, and soon enough it was becoming October again. Minato had easily drawn up resistance seals for both Shui and Itachi. All three were improving their skills by leaps and bounds. In fact, Shui and Minato had managed to refine the Shunshin Jutsu into a new technique that they liked to call Shuinpa. It was a combat-usable version of the Shushin and could be used to travel distances in an extreme burst of speed that didn't leave an indicator for the destination. It was similar to the Shunshin in that it gathered chakra and then released it for an explosive burst of speed. Shui and Minato had painstakingly refined the Shunshin until it became a much more efficient and combat-ready Shunshin. The technique consisted of gathering chakra under the heel as you took a step, allowing the chakra to burst and send the user flying forwards. The best part was that the jutsu was low chakra cost, and you could change directions while using it by simply taking another step. Minato almost felt that time was passing too quickly. After all, his 6th/30th birthday was coming up soon. He felt he'd accomplished a lot, and yet at the same time very little. Minato had set about remastering the Kawarimi, Henge, Kage Bunshin, and Rasengan, polishing each technique until he could perform them seamlessly. He'd also practiced the Shuriken and Kunai Bunshins until he could perform them with a single hand seal. Minato had also worked on the accuracy of his sensory abilities, subtly honing them by using them to guess Shui and Itachi's fluctuating moods and reading their body language. Shui often mentioned dreams of becoming the Flash brothers with Naruto and Itachi. It didn't hurt to dream after all, since Itachi still had trouble with being fast enough to catch up to Naruto and Shui, but he was slowly getting there. Shui had already earned his self-assigned nickname of Shunshin no Shui after his latest Jounin exams. He'd passed with flying colors, of course. On the other hand, Itachi had been assigned to take the Chunin exam solo. Naruto and Shui had been further refining the Shunpa awaiting Itachi's return so they could help him with the technique. Shui had combined his Shunpa with his after-image clones from his Shushin and made the technique twice as effective. Shui's after-image clones could hit but couldn't be hit in return. Minato simply focused on making his Shunpa faster and faster, until he achieved speeds where it looked like he was using his old Hiraishin again. One day, just as Shui was about to leave Naruto after walking him home from training as usual, he paused and took something out of his pouch. He then handed Naruto a long, thin, neatly wrapped box. Shui smiled brightly. "Your birthday's coming up, isn't it? I'll be on a mission that day, so here's your gift early. Consider it from me and Itachi." Minato took the box in his hands and weighed it gently. It was light, whatever it was. He turned the box around, examining it from all angles, almost hoping to spontaneously develop X-ray vision. He then shook the box gently. There was a metallic rattling he could hear coming from within it. "Well? Open it already," Shui said impatiently. He'd had enough of watching Naruto inspect the box suspiciously. All right, you don't have to rush me. Thanks though," Minato replied, tore off the paper, revealing a plain cardboard box. Opening the box, Minato was floored by the sight of something he thought he wouldn't get to see again. It was a sparkling Hiraishin kunai. Minato gaped in shock at the gift. How had those two gotten their hands on something that was considered a war relic? Minato's gaze bounced between Shui and the kunai blankly. Shui finally lost his patience and simply stated, "Itachi found it on a mission near Iwa. I just got it fixed up, is all." Naruto's eyes filled with tears. It was such a considerate gift. He launched himself forward at the Jounin and hugged him tightly. Shui understood the unspoken sentiments behind the gesture and merely smiled and hugged Naruto back tightly. "I really am glad to know you too," Minato managed to choke out to Shui. Shui nodded silently and squeezed Naruto just a little harder. Tensions had been rising between the village and the rest of the Uchiha clan. Naruto was like a bright ray of sunshine in the growing darkness. He deserved this small happiness. Unwillingly, Shui slowly pried Naruto off of himself. I've gotta go now, Naruto. Mission tomorrow, you know how it goes. And Minato did know, the mental preparations and weapon checks were crucial to a successful mission. Stay safe, Naruto. I've been hearing some bad rumors around the village. Sure ruffled Naruto's hair fondly. Well then, see ya. And he vanished in a quick shunpa. Minato fondly hugged the box to his chest. He'd missed his signature weapon. It felt like some lost part of him had finally returned home. Minato entered his apartment and softly closed the door. He couldn't contain the soft smile he had on his lips as he reminisced about the past year with Shursui and Itachi. It was as Shursui had said, he and Itachi had indeed become fast friends and got along very well. Both were calm and quiet by nature, and there was a shared understanding of the expectations that child geniuses were subjected to. To Itachi, Naruto was like what he would have been like without the Uchiha clan. Itachi wondered how he would have developed without the pushing of his father and clan. He liked to imagine he would have been like Naruto. To Minato, it was like looking at a quieter version of his old self. The same quiet fire was in Itachi's eyes. The boy was determined to protect all that was precious to him. Preparing for bed, Minato relaxed his senses slightly, not noticing an additional empty presence pop up near his apartment. The next few days until Minato's birthday passed quietly as he trained studiously by himself. Minato had the old academy katas ingrained into his muscle memory, and was working on developing a new taijutsu style to use. His old hummingbird fist had been effective but overly reliant on speed. If he couldn't get enough speed and momentum, his blows wouldn't be as powerful. Minato still highly valued speed though, so he would keep that aspect since Naruto's body was well built for speed as well. Perhaps he could call his new style the Super Flashdance Cheetah Lightning Strike style? Minato didn't understand why Shursui always looked at him strangely whenever he suggested names for things. He refined his chakra control even further, testing himself by separating different grains of sand on the palm of his hand, while using only his chakra. Minato figured he had enough control to attempt the Rasengan again, but he would need more practice to be able to precisely teleport for the Hiraishin. He would need the level of control Ahmed Nin had to expand on his ability to use the Hiraishin as well. For Minato had plans as to how he would improve the already legendary jutsu. On the day of his birthday, Minato woke up with a foreboding feeling in his stomach. This would be the first Kyuubi festival he had experienced outside of the orphanage. Wisdom and common sense told him to spend the day inside his apartment. Despite the Sandame telling him to enjoy the festival during one of their weekly dinner dates, Minato couldn't help but doubt the man. The Kyuubi container would probably not be greatly appreciated if seen walking around during a memorial festival where sake was well abundant and tempers high from remembrance. Minato spent the day laying in bed, staring at the ceiling and counting the amount of cracks he could see. He was bored out of his mind but also didn't feel like training on such a sad day. He'd already spent a few hours pondering the possibilities regarding what would have happened if his son and wife had lived. If who he suspected to be Uchiha Madara never attacked. He also had a theory that being in Naruto's body made him much more emotional compared to his own body. He didn't used to mope this much after all. Though speaking of the Kyuubi festival, he did have Kurama inside him after all, didn't he? Minato closed his eyes and fell into his mindscape. He judged the surroundings with a critical eye. Kurama was lying lazily on its stomach dozing, the walls had less cracks in it, and the water level seemed lower. Minato took this as a relatively good sign that his mind wasn't in shambles after that revelation-filled day. The Kyuubi opened an eye, calmly assessing the human standing in front of him. Kurama honestly felt much better as a whole, and he could think more clearly as well. This man intrigued him and somehow had an infectious mood. There was a charisma that drew you towards him naturally, and the man didn't seem to even realize it. "What do you want, human?" Kurama growled lowly. "Ah, nothing really, just checking up on you, Kurama-san," Minato said, scratching his chin and smiling awkwardly. "I figured I should get to know you better, you know? Since we're stuck together and all." The Kyuubi turned his head away from Minato in a huff. "There is nothing to know, human. Now leave. I have no intentions of becoming friends with you." "Ah, come on, Kurama-san, trust and friendship are two-way streets, you know." Just then Minato had a bright flash of inspiration. "What if I opened up my senses to you? It must get pretty boring in here, no?" Speechless, Kurama turned to stare at Minato once more. Minato didn't wait for an answer, he simply strode up to the seal casually and tore another small strip off of the corner of the seal. The Kyuubi gaped. What? What even was this human? To so casually extend their very senses to his prisoner? How many times would he continue to be surprised by this infuriatingly cheerful man? "Well then, see you around," Minato chirped cheerily and then popped out of his mindscape. What kind of gall did this man have to just exit a conversation with the great Kyuubi no Yoko like that? Just. What? Minato gleefully opened his eyes, a feeling of having successfully bamboozled someone washing over him. He turned on his side and considered his options for the night. Then he sighed, getting up to make dinner before he forgot to eat again. Kushina would have his head if he mistreated Naruto's body like that. Minato had just finished cooking when he felt people gathering in large numbers around his home. Dismissing it as part of the new Kyuubi festival, he started to eat. Until someone started to bang violently on his door. Minato jumped to his feet and ran to his window. His senses were going haywire, detecting a large group of people standing in front of his door. Whomever was pounding so hard on his door had absolutely no positive intent towards Naruto at all. In fact, it was all negative, so negative that Minato was reminded of a stormy night with a young crying girl and a pillow. He ran to the window and looked out, and then he quickly hopped out and ran off, shouts following him as he went. There he is! He went out the window! Catch him! Make him pay! Demon brat, get back here! Minato shot a quick glance behind him. What he saw made him pick up the pace and run faster. A mob! A mob had showed up at his apartment to hunt the fox brat. Minato was honestly shocked at the amount of hate and people that had gathered. He had done his best to live unobtrusively in the village of Konoha. People rarely saw him on the streets since he shopped under a henge. He never played with children as he was too busy training, and he never wandered the streets looking for food since he kept himself in good condition by budgeting. He didn't understand the sheer amount of animosity that was pouring off of the mob pursuing him. Minato ducked and weaved around various stalls, barely taking in the bright colors and cheer of his surroundings as he ran for his life. He ran towards an alleyway hoping to throw the pursers off his trail. It was not to be, unfortunately. There appeared to be some chunin in the drunken crowd who were able to accurately track him through the throngs of people that Minato had run through. He'd had one last request. It was to treat his son like a hero, and here people were doing the exact opposite. He had sacrificed so much, and yet this was his repayment. Minato giggled hysterically under his breath as he ran, tears building at the corners of his eyes. He thought of all the ways this encounter could possibly end. None of the endings were particularly good. He hoped to lose the crowd, but it was difficult when bystanders would point in his direction as he lost the mob. Minato hadn't had the time to explore the newly rebuilt Konoha since his new life, so it was inevitable that he eventually ran into a dead end. Cornered and feeling the mob draw ever closer, Minato was stuck in a dilemma. A flash of inspiration shot through Minato's mind, and he hinged into a random trash can by the side of the alley. The mob ran by the alley without giving it a second look, shouting obscenities as they went. Minato let out a sigh of relief. He waited a good hour or so to let the dust settle and then sent out a shadow clone to check if the coast was clear. Knowing that it would be dangerous to be seen as himself, Minato hinged into his customary Nara disguise and made his way to the Kage Tower in search of safety. He entered an alley besides the tower and released the hinge and ran full tilt into the tower before anyone could catch sight of him. All that the civilians milling about in front of the tower was a yellow blur that disappeared as quickly as it had come. Minato popped up in front of the secretary manning the desk in front of the Kage office. She started and gave him a nasty look. "Please, miss, I need to see the Hokage right now," he implored. The secretary sniffed and went back to her work. "The Hokage is busy with very important matters, he doesn't have time for children." But Minato persisted. He was determined to talk to Sarutobi about the treatment he received at the hands of the villagers. "Please, miss, it's important, and he needs to know." "Look, he doesn't have time for children, so you can wait over there and see if you're lucky," she snappily replied. Minato huffed in impatience. He stubbornly sat himself down on one of the seats in the lobby. He would wait as long as he needed. This couldn't be let go anymore. He didn't have to wait long since the day was ending and the Sandaime soon left the office to go home. Mildly startled by the blonde boy sitting in his lobby, the Sandaime asked, "Now what's wrong, young Naruto? You've never sought me out like this before?" "Old man, a mob formed and chased me around Konoha." "What?" "Yeah. I lost them eventually, but they kept yelling things about avenging their yondaime and families, or beating the fox, or even finishing what the yondaime started." The Sandaime's face instantly became grave. He opened the door to the office and waved Naruto in. Naruto took a seat in front of the Sandaime's desk as the old man took his spot at the desk. "Old man, this can't continue. The people hate me and I don't know why." The old man rubbed his temples tiredly. "I'm sorry, Naruto. They hate what they don't understand and fear." Minato's eyes narrowed. Was the old man going to finally tell him about his role as Jinchuriki? That would allow him to finally train abilities pertaining to a Jinchuriki. "What do you mean by fear?" The Sandaime shook his head. I'm sorry, Naruto, I can't tell you just yet. There's too much you don't understand yet. Minato was filled with a crushing disappointment in the Sandaime. This was not how you told a child the reason a whole village despised your existence. That's not very encouraging, you know. And can't you just explain what it is that I don't know? I can keep a secret, he coolly responded. I'm sorry, but you're too young. Minato stood from his chair, calmly walking up to the Sandaime to stare him in the face. I'm too young to know why the village hates me? I'm too young to know why they stare at me like that as I walk the streets. I'm too young to know why the prices are doubled when I try to buy anything? I'm too young to know why I don't have parents? I'm too young to know why mothers pull their children away as I walk by. I'm too young to understand why a mob formed with the intention of lynching me? The Sandaime stared at Naruto with wide eyes. He truly did not know of the extent of the village's animosity towards the child. If this goes on, I can't say there won't be any retaliation. Minato turned away from the Sandaime to return to his chair. The Sandaime stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see the Sandaime's hard eyes. What do you mean by retaliation, Naruto? Minato gave the Sandaime a cruel smile. Why, I mean by pranking the hell out of people, of course. The old man sighed in relief, allowing his hand to drop from the child's shoulder. Just nothing that involves too much paperwork, please, he begged. His response was only a wry smile. Old man, promise me that you'll look into this mob incident, won't you? And promise to tell me about the hate? Putting on his very best puppy eyes, Minato gazed imploringly at the Sandaime. Even the strongest-willed shinobi would be hard-pressed to resist those sparkling watery blue eyes. Minato would know. He practiced in a mirror after all. The Sandaime crumbled and patted Naruto's head. Of course, my child, I promise that something like this will never happen again. I also promise to tell you when you reach Chunin. You are a highly responsible child, and I hope for you to enjoy your childhood. Minato gave the Sandaime a soft smile. At the very least, the old man seemed to genuinely care for his son despite all of the neglect. Minato was invited to stay at the Hokage Tower for as long as he needed as the ANBU was dispatched to round up the mob's ringleaders and disperse the crowd. He spent his time waiting by plotting how he would harmlessly return fire upon the cruel citizens of Konoha. He may have reaffirmed his determination to protect Konoha when he realized his son was dead, but that didn't mean he couldn't cause a little havoc. Certain people that didn't glare at him on the street, or at least treated him fairly, would be spared. As for the others? No mercy. Konoha would see the return of the Uzumaki prankster from hell. After the Sandaime gave him the all-clear, he returned home to his apartment under a henge of brunette young boy. What he found was incredibly disheartening. The outsides of his apartment had been vandalized and covered in various obscene graffiti messages. At the very least, no one had broken into his apartment from what he could tell. Not that there weren't any markings that showed there had been attempts. Minato formed a shadow clone and told it to clean up as much of the graffiti as possible. He didn't want Shursui or Itachi finding out about this incident. It would be his own hidden shame and pain. They didn't need to know what their precious Konoha was truly like. In the weeks before Shursui and Itachi returned to Konoha, Konoha experienced a wave of pranking like none other. Haruno Mabuki was washing her hair peacefully one day. She had just returned from a long and tiring council meeting about possibly blocking the demon brat from attending the academy. She sighed and rinsed her hair out. The Shinobi Council was adamant that the demon be adequately educated, just like any other child. She had argued that as a demon he didn't need the extra training. Looking up at the mirror, she screamed in horror. Her hair! Her beautiful hair! It had been dyed a bright eye-searing neon blue. She fainted away in her bath. The next day, a certain commerce area was struck by a horrible case of itching. Many people were out on the streets furiously scratching themselves, searching for relief. The cause was traced back to a commonly used laundromat. Apparently, the regular fabric softener had been replaced by itching powder instead. Nonsensical tripwires littered the commerce area. While many were duds, many others set off large hidden buckets of paint on citizens and shinobi alike. Certain civilians had all of their clothes replaced by bright green jumpsuits. While initially unwilling to wear the jumpsuits, the civilians were left with nothing else to wear lest they go out naked in the streets. A unique youthful jounin was seen crying buckets of tears over the youthfulness of Konoha when he saw the crowds of green. Stink bombs and air horns had been rigged to go off randomly whenever people stepped in the wrong spot on Main Street. Many civilians were left shaken by a series of loud, obnoxious noises. Pigs numbered 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 were set loose upon the civilian town hall. Hours were spent rounding up the rabid animals, and then even longer spent searching for a non-existent pig. Transparent cellophane was wrapped over the toilets of certain civilian houses. The locks on all the doors of the civilian council members had been swapped with one another, leaving many a civilian locked in their homes for a day, missing out on work. The porn collections of certain men became replaced with versions of Ika Ika Yaoi. The Hokage monument was painted in bright neon colors and graffitied in a most obnoxious manner. And much, much more. Citizens flocked to the Sandaime hoping he would do something about the prankster, but the Sandaime merely sighed and dragged his hand down his face, as no real harm had been done, and no real security measures could be implemented to catch the prankster. The Kage could only shake his head and hand out more D-ranks to disgruntled genin to clean up the aftermaths of the prank. Various shinobi organized their own personal patrol groups to attempt to find the prankster, but when said prankster had the chakra suppression skills of a sage and stealth skills of a Kage, the feat was impossible. By the time both Shursui and Itachi returned, the whole of Konoha was buzzing with news of an unknown prankster. Shursui and Itachi had returned to an overly paranoid Konoha. It was strange because everyone was on edge as if an attack could happen at any moment, but there was a distinct lack of tension in the air. Shinobi were jerky and awkward while the civilians seemed to be terrified of their own shadows. He targeted all the civilian council member and the Sandaime's old advisors in his pranking spree, and he couldn't be happier. Of course his revenge was far from over, but this was enough. For now. Minato's prank fest reminded him of better days planning larger pranks together with Kushina. It was a very effective form of stress relief he'd discovered. He fondly remembered how she would happily end up with all the blame after a prank, no one suspecting that Minato goody two-shoes he was to be in on it as well. Minato would continue her pranks in her honor, and if he let out some of his anger on the civilians, well, they deserved it. Danzo slammed his hand on the table and raged. The root agent standing in front of him stoically did not flinch. You mean to tell me that a crowd of adults and fully trained shunin lost a child in our own village? Yes, sir. After the boy turned a corner on 56th Street, the crowd was unable to locate the boy again. Danzo leaned back in his chair and sighed. Such incompetent ninja in Konoha's forces nowadays. This is exactly why his route was necessary for the well-being of the village. He was furious. His plot to attack the Jinchuriki with a mob and then save him, thus making the Jinchuriki indebted to him, had failed spectacularly. Now years of planning had potentially gone down the drain. Hiruzen was suspicious of him now. Root was on the verge of being disbanded. No matter. The Jinchuriki was always a long-term goal. There are other ways to secure his loyalty. Continue to monitor the boy as usual. The Foundation agent nodded and disappeared. Even the reports he received regarding the Jinchuriki were unsatisfactory. At times the boy would disappear from his agent's view and they would not be able to locate him again for hours. It bothered him a lot that even the best of his spies couldn't read the boy. Somehow a 6-year-old boy would know he was being followed and would never train openly, or would lose the spies before disappearing to do who knows what. Danzo resolved himself. For the good of Konoha, the Jinchuriki must be under his thumb. Hiruzen was simply too soft to make use of the Jinchuriki's full potential. Minato leapt away from a thrown kunai. Jumping from tree to tree as he dodged various projectiles sent his direction by an incensed Itachi. Minato had finally paid Itachi back for his cheeky kawarimi during their first free-for-all battle by dyeing Itachi's hair a bright pink with a cleverly thrown water balloon. Come on, Itachi, calm down. It's not waterproof. Minato cackled as he leapt from branch to branch. Just dunk your head in the creek and cool off. Ahaha. It had been nearly 2 years since the three boys had met each other, and they were as thick as thieves. They had agreed to form a partnership in the near future so that they could take the same missions together. During the 1 year that had passed, Shursui and Itachi joined the ANBU to further support their clan's standing. Though this meant less time for Naruto with the duo, they still made an effort to train regularly with the whiskered blonde. Itachi had even introduced Naruto to the rest of his family and his younger brother, Sasuke. Sasuke seemed to dislike Naruto on principle. He viewed Naruto as someone trying to steal his brother's time, even though Itachi obviously preferred to cater to his younger brother's whims most of the time. Mikoto appeared to be highly pleased that there was another boy willing to be friends with her children. Fugaku hid his reactions towards Naruto, hiding whatever he thought behind a veneer of disinterest. Unfortunately, tensions between the Uchiha and the rest of Konoha had gotten even worse. People now openly expressed discontent with the Uchiha military police, and there were whispers of a possible rebellion in the works. Even Naruto had somehow become involved in the whole mess. Certain people accused the Uchiha of consorting with the Kyuubi due to Naruto's interactions with Shursui and Itachi. They eventually had to move their training to Training Grounds 44 just for privacy. In fact, there were a few times where unsavory individuals who had been encouraged by the mob incident had tried following Naruto to give him a beating. Minato always detected them from far away and remembered his lessons from the chase. He would henge away or send a shadow clone in a random direction. He had also taken the time to explore Konoha during his prank spree for the best hiding places and made a note of all the dead ends he encountered. Finally giving up on catching Naruto, Itachi panted as he slumped on the ground, pink hair dangling in front of his face limply. Minato saw that Itachi had given up and cheekily bounced over to pat Itachi on the head. Itachi glared weakly at Naruto from between strands of neon hair. Hey, Naru, ha 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 ha. Shursui had just arrived at the clearing that Itachi stopped in and caught sight of his bright hair. Shursui high-fived Naruto. You really got him good this time. Nice one. Yeah. You should have seen his face when I hit him. Itachi humphed and turned away from the two to wash his hair in the nearby creek. So? He asked as he rinsed his hair out. What did you call us out here for, Shursui? Oh, nothing in particular. I thought we needed a day off from missions and we could just hang out with Naruto. Shursui chirped, plopping down on the ground and crossing his legs. Minato copied Shursui, getting comfortable on the ground in front of Shursui. So what should we do today then? Shursui shrugged blithely. I don't know. NBU has been rough lately and Itachi could use a break. Itachi walked over to the two, wringing his hair out and shaking his head, sending drops of water flying at Naruto and Shursui earning indignant shouts of reproach. He then sat down, completing their little triangle. I had been meaning to ask you too. What do you think the meaning of a shinobi is? Minato and Shursui both blinked at Itachi, not expecting the philosophical question at this time of day. Normally Itachi waited until later in the evening to start asking thought-provoking questions. Well, Minato started. I think a shinobi is someone who endures the pains of the world for the sake of others. Indeed, said Shursui, a shinobi is someone who acts in darkness to protect his village. Itachi simply nodded his head, deep in thought. Minato examined Shursui and Itachi closely. Recently it felt as if they were distancing themselves from him. He chalked it up to the pressures of ANBU, but Itachi was acting strange. Itachi, what's on your mind? Nothing. You need to worry about Naruto. Shursui looked at Itachi knowingly. He too was worried about his friend. Itachi was the clan heir and thus knew more details about the coup than Shursui, who was an Uchiha orphan, did. Itachi was lost in thought. Fugaku had revealed a plan to him after the last clan meeting to stage a rebellion by taking control of the Kyuubi with his Mangekyo Sharingan. The Uchiha had figured if the rest of Konoha kept accusing them of the Kyuubi attack, then they may as well take advantage of that. It would be a bloodless revolution if the Uchiha could use the monstrous strength of the Kyuubi to intimidate the rest of Konoha into backing down. Except there were many flaws with that plan. First of all, it would require Itachi to sacrifice his close friend Naruto. Secondly, it would create a hostile environment built off of fear. Third, what is the Mangekyo didn't work on the Kyuubi and a second tragedy happened. There would be no Yondaime to save them then. Itachi just didn't know what to do about the whole situation. Shursui thought back to his meeting with the Hokage. He was grateful that the old Kage had given him a chance to save his clan from destruction. He would have to bear the stigma of using the Koto Amatsukami on his own clan by himself, but it would protect the precious moments he had seen between Itachi and Sasuke. Unaware of his companion's thoughts, Minato simply scrutinized them closely. He could feel that they both were troubled and conflicted, Itachi more so than Shursui. He didn't know what could upset them, so perhaps it was an ANBU mission gone wrong? Wanna play a prank on the Hyuga with me? Minato asked out of the blue. What? Huh? I said, do you two want to play a prank on the Hyuga with me? Shursui connected the dots instantly. He leapt to his feet, finger jabbed into Naruto's face and shouted, "ITSU! You're the one who's been pranking the village!" Minato smiled innocently. Who? Me? I don't know what you're talking about. I just wanted to know if you guys wanted to go dye the Hyuga clothes orange with me. Itachi snorted at the thought and looked at Naruto as if he were joking. The dawning horror on his face as he realized Naruto was being deadly serious was priceless to Minato. Wait, seriously? Asked Shursui skeptically. Minato smirked. Yep, he said, popping the pea. As Hijiri jumped up and grabbed Naruto by the shoulders, shaking him desperately. Wait, no. Before we go, you have to tell me how you painted the Hokage mountain in broad daylight without anyone noticing. It was an assignment worthy of an S-rank mission, sneaking into the Hyuga compound, that is. Making it into the Hyuga compound without detection had seemed impossible, but Naruto provided Shursui and Itachi with specially drawn seals that hid their chakra signatures from dojutsu. Itachi marveled at his friend's skills. Naruto had never really explained how he managed to learn sealing, but he trusted them enough to not tell anyone of his prowess. After all, The Hyuga would go berserk if they learned that a seal had been developed to counter their vaunted eyesight. Holding back the giggles, 3 young shinobi went about dyeing every garment they could get their hands on an eye-searing orange in the Hyuga laundry room. "How did you get so much dye, Naruto?" Shursui whispered to Minato as they stuck to the ceiling watching unsuspecting Hyuga clansmen walk below them. "The trick is to make it yourself," Minato whispered back, holding back a bout of laughter as he visualized Hayashi's sour face in the morning. Itachi's stoic face was twitching as he crawled upside down beside the whispering duo. Minato could see the barely suppressed laughter shaking Itachi's body. He was sorely tempted to poke him in the ribs to see if Itachi would pop. But that would give the jig away. Sneaking out of the compound was easier than sneaking in. The trio were able to spray paint a few cheeky messages on the walls as they left, consisting of lewd jokes and jabs about how all-seeing their eyes really were. When they made it back to the clearing in Trading Grounds 44, the trio stood around staring at each other stoically. Itachi's left eye was twitching violently. Shursui's mouth was spasming and Naruto was shaking. Shursui was the first to crack, bursting out in loud uproarious laughter, setting off both Itachi and Minato. "I can't believe we just did that," he guffawed. Itachi was pounding the ground laughing and failing to stop. Naruto had simply abandoned all dignity, and was simply rolling around on the ground giggling. After several breathless minutes, Shursui finally calmed enough to choke out a thanks towards Naruto. "What for? For getting you two nearly caught as we were climbing that wall? No. You don't have to thank me, that's what friends are for," Naruto said sagely, patting Shursui's fluffy hair. "No, really thanks Naruto, we needed that." Sure ruffled Naruto's hair in return. Itachi nodded in the background as Naruto and Shursui devolved into a hair-ruffling fight. "Indeed, thank you very much for the much-needed humor, Naruto," he said, cheeks still tinted pink from laughter. Naruto gave up on the hair-ruffling, letting Shursui mess up his already messy hair even further, as he smiled softly at Itachi. "No problem." As Itachi and Shursui were leaving that day, they both pulled Naruto into tight hugs. Itachi whispered to Naruto just as they left, "If any Uchiha tries to get you to go anywhere with them, come find me or Shursui immediately. I know you can take care of yourself, but be safe. Please." Shursui panted as he ran, chased by several root members. He flipped in midair, dodging a throw array of kunai and blocked a blow aiming to hamstring him. How had it all gone to hell so quickly? Shursui stared over the village from the top of the Hokage monument. He thought about the tender moments Itachi shared with his brother Sasuke. He thought about the smiles that he had seen as he walked through the village. He thought about all the dark, unmentionable deeds he had performed for Konoha and Anbu. Shursui mentally apologized to Itachi. He would be taking on the burden of stopping the coup by himself. He would use the Kodo Amatsukami on the clan. This would protect the rare and precious smile that Itachi held whenever he spent time with Sasuke. Suddenly an Anbu member appeared behind Shursui. "Shursui-san, Danzo-sama would like to speak with you immediately." What could he possibly want? Shursui thought. The ANBU agent had interrupted him just as he was about to cast the Kodo Amatsukami. Disappearing in a Shunpa, Shursui arrived at an underground temple that Danzo often used for meeting his foundation members. The sun was slowly setting, casting everything into shadow and painting the area gold. "What is it, Danzo-sama? The assembly is about to start. Even if you use your genjutsu on Fugaku and the clan to get them to cooperate, what is the village doesn't change." "Hokage-sama has promised to make it change," Shursui replied surely. "Even if the Sandaime is satisfied, the distrust amongst the Leaf will not go away," Danzo rebutted. "I realize that. But in time. Besides, someone who's always suspicious like me will never change." Danzo lowered his head. "What will you do then?" "But Danzo-sama." Danzo looked up and stared intently at Shursui. "When the time comes, will you use your Kodo Amatsukami on me too?" Shursui hesitated. "Your Sharingan shall be in my safekeeping," Danzo interrupted, lunged forwards aiming directly for Shursui's right eye. His hand was caught by Shursui in a harsh and bruising grip. Danzo froze, caught inside a genjutsu, eyes moving rapidly but without coherence, and slumping down in Shursui's grip. Shursui stared disapprovingly at Danzo. "It's just a weak genjutsu, you'll snap out of it after a while. Don't get in my way," he said, turning away from Danzo to get back to his self-assigned mission. Suddenly, without warning, Shursui took a harsh blow to the stomach. He swiftly shunpoed away before Danzo could make another attempt on his eyes. Shursui was stunned. How had Danzo broken out of his genjutsu so fast? He coughed as he tried to recover from the gut blow. What? How? So sure of his imminent victory, Danzo slowly unraveled the bandages covering his right eye, revealing a Sharingan eye just as it faded and became blind. A Sharingan? How has no one discovered this Kekkei Genkai theft? And was that the Izanami just now? I will be taking your right eye to replace this one you have cost me. As Danzo spoke, several root members appeared in Shunshin wearing signature A and BU cloaks and masks surrounding Shursui. They held out kunai, vaguely threatening Shursui. Shursui considered his options briefly. He raised his arm and threw down a smoke bomb, disappearing in his fastest shunpa yet. A teleportation technique? After him. Quickly! Do not let him escape! Shursui blocked a slash aimed for his neck by Foundation members in a cat mask. He shunput away again to gain distance, trying his best to maintain his lead. A flurry of kunai flew towards him, and he deflected them all with his kunai. Landing on a branch, he was soon forced to shunpa again as a brace of shuriken thudded into the tree. This can't go on. I'll have to take them out, Shursui thought desperately as he returned fire with his own kunai. Another agent rushed at him, engaging Shursui in a fierce taijutsu match with flashing kunai blades. Shursui unsheathed his tanto in a brief opening of the battle and decapitated the agent who was battling him. An agent wearing a bird mask ambushed him from the left with another kunai, slashing Shursui across his left arm and throwing down a poison bomb as he went. In another shunpa, Shursui stabbed the bird-masked agent through the throat, leaving him choking on his blood as Shursui fled. Landing on another branch, Shursui stumbled and fell to the forest floor below as his vision wavered and his legs weakened. He felt shaky and began coughing violently. Shit! I must have inhaled some of that poison. And who knows what exactly was on that kunai blade? The root agents surrounded him again. The captain gestured to his squad and one by one they all raised kunai with explosive tags tied to them. Aim for the legs, don't damage anything above the neck, came the cold-hearted order. His agents nodded, swiftly sending the kunai flying at Shursui from all directions. Boom! A cloud of dust flew up into the air and settled over the forest. The captain gestured to his subordinates. They nodded and separated to search for Shursui's body parts. Suddenly a shower of bright green projectiles thudded into 3 agents. The smoke cleared, revealing a standing Shursui who was engulfed by a giant fiery green humanoid figure in a tengu mask. The figure appeared to have its chest cage opened, ribs on stark display with a bright red matagama in the middle of its chest. Shursui panted as his Susanoo slowly disappeared from existence, leaving him defenseless once more. One of the agents broke off from formation and engaged Shursui as the captain, and last remaining member hung back and started readying a jutsu together. Unexpectedly, the single agent engaging Shursui fell with a kunai through the back of his neck. 2 fireballs blasted into the remaining root agents, charring them alive, not even leaving time to shout. Shursui, are you okay? A worried shout came from the other side of the clearing. Naruto and Itachi came running out of the forest towards Shursui. Naruto hurried to support Shursui as he collapsed. Huff, thanks guys, how did you know I needed help? And sorry for the trouble. Naruto sensed that your chakra signature was in distress. He found me and then we arrived to see your technique disappear. Itachi replied as he hovered over Shursui with a basic diagnostic jutsu. He frowned in worry. Shursui had been poisoned with a fast-acting agent that Itachi doubted anyone aside from Tsunade had the skill to remove. Shursui, you don't have much longer left. Naruto snapped his head towards Itachi. What? No! We can make it to the hospital in time. Shursui just has to hang in there for a bit longer. Shursui shook his head. We're going to our spot at the Naka River. There's something I must tell both of you urgently. He then disappeared in a shuinpa. Naruto directed a pleading look towards Itachi, but Itachi just frowned and shook his head. Minato hardened his eyes and heart, following after Shursui with his own shuinpa. The Naka River was truly a spectacular sight in the setting sun. The beautiful pink rays of light played off the tops of the trees surrounding the valley of the Naka River, and the water was a beautiful blue that rushed cheerfully along. The river looked like a painting rendered masterfully by a professional artist. Unfortunately, this beautiful sight was lost upon the 3 shinobi that had just arrived. Naruto and Itachi appeared at the Naka River to a coughing Shursui. Itachi started a basic healing technique on his friend to at least ease the pain. Shursui panted as he looked at the two with worried and drawn expressions. He laughed. Don't make those worried faces at me. I believe in the 2 of you to carry on for me in my place. He turned to Naruto. Naruto, the Uchiha clan has been planning a coup by using the power of the Kyuubi against the village. Itachi and I were assigned a mission to spy on the clan and stop the coup. Of course, if internal warfare breaks out in the Leaf, our neighboring countries will not hesitate to invade. Minato gasped. Had the treatment of the Uchiha really deteriorated so much that they now considered rebellion? He'd felt the rising tension, but he had been in no position to do anything about it. While Naruto was contemplating his words, Shisui turned to Itachi and continued, Itachi, the Koto Amatsukami plan has failed, Danzo's root interfered, he doesn't trust me and he wants my eyes for himself. He will resort to anything to protect the hidden leaf. They'll probably be coming for my eyes again. Minato gasped as Itachi stoically watched Shisui remove his own eyes. Holding out a hand to the both of them, he told them, please, keep my eyes safe. I believe in the both of you. Itachi, I will be giving you a great power, you'll need it in the coming days. Please protect Konoha in my stead. Itachi gasped, Shisui. You can't. Shisui patted Itachi on the shoulder. I'm not going to last much longer anyways, take it as my dying wish. Speechless, Itachi could only gaze at his friend with a stricken expression on his face. Shisui smiled at them blindly. Come on, even like this I can tell those faces you guys are making. Don't look so worried, Itachi, Naruto, you must always remain calm. Everything will be fine. Naruto sadly took the eye in his hand, drawing a seal on his arm with Shisui's blood and sealing it away immediately. Itachi summoned a crow and implanted Shisui's eye into it. He lowered his head respectfully to Shisui. I will carry on your will for the Uchiha. Naruto nodded fervently next to him. Shisui grasped Itachi on the shoulder again. From now on, you may be forced to walk down a long dark path. One that is filled with pain and suffering. I have to apologize. Shisui's grip on Itachi's shoulder tightened, that I can't be there with you through it all. Still, I hope you don't falter from your path. And keep moving forwards as a leaf ninja. I believe in you. In both of you. That is why I'm able to ask you to carry on my will, he said, turning to Naruto as well. Naruto had silent tears trailing down his face as Shisui patted his shoulder as well. Itachi grit his teeth tightly. Last actions complete, Shisui was relieved. He let out a short sigh. Don't stop me. With those final damning words, Shisui smiled and stepped backwards off the cliff, disappearing into the raging waters of the Naka River silently. Shisui! Naruto and Itachi both shouted, simultaneously reaching for Shisui's hands. Only to fall short by inches. Naruto pounded the ground, sobbing helplessly. Why? Shisui, why? Itachi watched as Naruto raged emotionlessly. In truth, he wanted to rage and sob as well, but Naruto was shedding enough tears for the both of them already. He suddenly gasped, clutching his eyes in pain. They burned. Naruto turned to Itachi at the gasp. Itachi, your eyes are bleeding. Hurrying over, Naruto pried one of Itachi's eyes open, gasping at what he saw. Itachi's standard Sharingan with 3 tomos had morphed into a tri-bladed shuriken shape. Your eyes. They're different. Itachi waved Naruto off, wiping the blood off his face as he closed his eyes. This is the 4th stage of the Sharingan. It can only be unlocked by extreme emotional pain. Naruto sniffled a bit and calmed himself. So what do we do now? We? There is no we. This is an Uchiha problem and it shall be solved by an Uchiha. Shisui shouldn't have told you. You would have me watch my best friend die in front of me without knowing why? Itachi remained silent at the accusation. I will have to cleanse the clan with my own 2 hands. I will take on this burden by myself and become a missing nin. You do not need to worry, Naruto. What do you mean you don't need to worry? It doesn't have to be this way. We can go to the Sandaime for help. We just have to prove that Danzo is behind this and then we can negotiate with the Uchiha clan. We can't. There is a third party whom I suspect to be Uchiha Madara manipulating events to destroy Konoha. He promised that he would spare the village and my brother if I slaughtered the clan. This is the only way to protect the peace of the village. What? Uchiha Madara? You're too young to understand the whole situation, Naruto. It has to be this way. But the children. They're innocent. Taking a huge gamble. Minato tried a different approach, and Itachi, I'm not. I'm sorry that it has to be this way, Naruto. Please take care of Sasuke for me. Interrupted Itachi. Itachi turned his new spinning tri-bladed shuriken eyes onto Naruto, gazing directly into his eyes. And Minato knew no more. Minato woke up with a start. He looked around him in confusion and stared up at a familiar cracked ceiling. He was in his own apartment? How did he get here? Wasn't he at the Naka River with Itachi? Minato scrambled to sit up. Concentrating, he cast his senses out as far as they could go, encompassing the entirety of Konoha. He knew he had failed to convince Itachi the moment he hit the Uchiha compound. Where there used to be a large clump of fire-natured adults, there were now only less than 20 smaller signatures that gave off an aura of grief. Minato collapsed back to his bed from the strain of holding the technique. He covered his eyes. He'd failed again. He had failed his precious people again. If only he had pushed to master the Hiraishin sooner, then he could have saved Sure Sui. He was always too late when it mattered. Too late to save Obito. Too late to save Rin. Too late to stop the Kyuubi from being extracted. For the fastest man in the world, he felt slow. Very slow. No more. He wouldn't allow the guilt and pain to overwhelm him this time. There was no time for moping. He wouldn't allow this anymore. Minato ran out of his apartment towards the Hokage Tower. The whole village seemed to be in mourning, and newspapers with the headline of Uchiha Massacre littered the streets. Minato cursed Itachi in his mind. If only he could have explained himself, then maybe this wouldn't have had to happen. Minato grabbed one of the newspapers as he ran, speedily skimming through it. The newspapers declared Itachi to have gone insane due to the pressures upon him as clan heir and slaughtering the clan as a test of power. It had apparently also been several days since Minato had been knocked out. Minato cursed Itachi in his mind again. That explained the empty stomach. This time Minato didn't bother with the secretary at the desk at all. He simply barged into the Kage's office with the fury of 1,000 raging suns. The old Kage, who had started from his paperwork extremely dramatically, Minato caught a flash of orange as he did so. His anger reached new levels. The Uchiha were dead and the Sandaime was relaxing by reading his novels. Minato snapped out, "Please have your leave the room, I have something important to discuss with you." The Sandaime calmly stared at Naruto. "And who are you to order me to do anything, HM? Naruto?" Minato crossed his arms. "As a concerned citizen who is worried about the state of his governing body, I would like to discuss the Uchiha coup." The Sandaime's eyes widened. He gestured to his ANBU and they left the room. "I said all of your ANBU," Minato said, striding over to a darkened corner and staring at it judgingly. "Umbu. There is a rude agent here," the Sandaime shouted. Instantly the agent was taken down and hauled to TNI. The Sandaime could only shake his head in disappointment. He just disbanded Root and Danzo was testing his limits already. Naruto wasted no time in taking up a seat in front of the Sandaime and saying, "My father would be disappointed in you for how you handled the Uchiha situation." The Sandaime choked. The man couldn't even begin to count the number of things wrong with that statement. So he started with the most obvious. "Your father? I thought you didn't know who he was? How did you know?" Minato just stared at the Sandaime. "Well, your reaction just confirmed it. Not many blonde-haired, blue-eyed men married the last Uzumaki left in Konoha," he snarkily said. The Sandaime deflated. He was too old to deal with this. "What do you mean he would be disappointed in me for the Uchiha situation? Did you even try negotiating with the Uchiha? Did you even give them a chance?" "Well, Sure Sui. No. It should not have been left to a teen. It should have been taken care of by responsible adults. There was so much unneeded death. The majority of the clan was innocent in this, and yet almost every Uchiha is dead." The Sandaime looked downcast. He sighed. "And what would you have me do, Naruto?" Minato looked at the Sandaime. He really looked at the man. This was just an old man too tired from his responsibilities and too worn from the wars. The Sandaime was a person too, and he was very fallible. There needed to be a new Hokage. The Sandaime's days had long passed. If it had been him in the chair, he would have done whatever possible to stop the massacre from happening. The Uchiha were a founding clan of Konoha after all. He wouldn't have let the situation start from the very beginning. "I would have you give me my rightful inheritance. I'm going to learn the Hiraishin. I won't let something like this happen ever again." The Sandaime lifted his head. "Of course. Speaking of which, how did you know about the Uchiha coup, Naruto?" Minato paused to choke past a lump in his throat. "Sure Sui was one of my best friends." "I see. I'm sorry for your loss." "No. I am sorry for all of Konoha's loss." "You speak as if it were not your fault, old man." "It was on Danzo's orders that Itachi slaughtered his clan. Though talented, I did not expect him to truly be capable of eliminating so many people. It was still under your jurisdiction that Danzo was able to act with so much freedom. In the end, the massacre falls upon your shoulders." Minato then lowered his head and thought, Itachi probably had help from who he expected to be Madara. When will this man leave Konoha alone? How can I deal with him? Should I become a hunter nin or ANBU to search for him? He looked up at the Sandaime again. "I hope you've stripped Danzo of any power he has?" The Sandaime closed his eyes and nodded gravely. accepting the blame for what it was. I have disbanded his root force if that is what you are asking. What about his council seat? He has too much support for me to be able to force him off the council. Minato grew frustrated. The Sandaime was truly weak now. It was little wonder that the Uchiha massacre had happened during his rule. The little trust he had within the Sandaime had withered from this short interaction. So will you be going public with your heritage from now on? No. I need to build up more strength to reveal my heritage, and Konoha can't afford to hold off IWA just for my sake, especially now that the Uchiha are gone. It will honestly be a miracle if we remain unmolested considering the Kyuubi attack and now the loss of the military police. I agree. You are indeed wise beyond your years, Naruto. Here are the papers for your inheritance. You now own the past Uzumaki compound and Namake's estates. Where will you be living from now on? I'll be living in the Namake's estate from now on. I need to increase my strength as soon as possible, and the resources are available there for me. Understood. Old man, what's going to happen to the rest of the remaining Uchiha, and how are they doing? They are relatively fine if not horribly traumatized. There are 15 survivors, of which the oldest is Uchiha Izumi at 13 and the youngest, Uchiha Haruka, at 2 months. They will be left to their own devices as the oldest surviving Uchiha should be able to adequately corral them. Uchiha Sasuke will become clan head when he becomes of age or attains the rank of Chunin.